reply to Peter's email?
Over the weekend?
Yeah.
I haven't caught up yet, no.
Are we okay?
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Doug's
good.
out?
Doug is out, yeah.
Okay.
Doug is out.
Looks like Jerry's missing, or is he here?
Jerry's not out.
Oh, he's not? Okay, because I saw this email from the lady who sent him the email.
Jerry's not
A
coming.
friend of mine wrote a hate Schermerhorn.
We've
A
already
friend of
said that.
mine, she has done a film on marriage, so she wrote a thing for the Huffington Post on him.
Who's on tonight for the public hearing? Mark? You're on tonight for the public hearing.
I'm sorry?
You're on tonight for the public hearing.
Oh, wait a minute, I meant.
my iPad because it wasn't
January 24th, 2012, executive session of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. The meeting will now come to order. First item on the agenda are the meeting minutes from January 10th, 2012. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Connelly has moved to accept. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Jacobson. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carried unanimously. Next item, new applications to recommend for public hearing, 930 Kings Highway East. A special exception application of Miller Nissan for additions and renovations of an existing auto dealership in a design commercial district.
This is, I'm assuming you're familiar with where Nissan is on Kings Highway. If you remember, there used to be two dealerships. There was Miller Ford and Miller Buick for a long time before the Nissan days. And there's a rounded showroom and there's a squared off showroom. They're looking to square off the rounded showroom basically and make a unified facade. So there's going to be a partial demolition of the rounded showroom and then filling in more demolition than new construction with a new facade on, but it is some infill, so it does require special exception.
Is there a motion on this to recommend a public hearing?
Move, Mr. Chairman, move to public hearing.
Commissioner Connelly has moved to public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jacobs has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving to public hearing 930 Kings Highway East, special exception application of Miller Nissan for additions and renovations of an existing auto dealership in a designed commercial district, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Next item, 5401 Park Avenue, special exception and special permit application of Sacred Heart University pertaining to the construction of a new academic building in an R3 zone.
This is the currently vacant parcel on the corner of Park and Jefferson Street, adjacent to the convalescent home. It butts the convalescent home, and then to the north, it's abutted by the ball fields for Notre Dame High School. They're looking to build a new academic building there for the School of Business and the School of Education.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this?
So moved.
Commissioner Jacobson has moved to public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Barrett has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving to public hearing 5401 Park Avenue, special exception and special permit application of Sacred Heart University pertaining to the construction of a new academic building in an R3 zone, signified by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Item goes to public hearing. Next item, 85 Mill Plain Road, compliance application of 85 Pond Mill LLC for expanded gym use with request for reduced parking in a design industrial district.
This is the well-known Sportsplex. You may be familiar with one of the larger tenants there is gymnastics and cheerleading use. They're looking to expand into some currently unleased space, and they're looking to apply the same parking ratio that they've applied to the rest of the gym space. So because it is a request for that reduction, it does require a public hearing.
Thank you. Is there a motion to refer this to public hearing?
Motion to approve, to move to public hearing.
Commissioner Connelly has moved to public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Barrett has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving 85 Mill Plain Road, compliance application of 85 Pond Mill LLC for expanded gym use with request for reduced parking in a design industrial district, signified by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Next item is old business. We have four items. The first is 160 Woodrow Avenue. That was the request for Harbor Homes LLC for release of a $12,653 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in a B zone. I believe we did not have the public hearing on that, though.
Yeah, here you have an option on this. What you did is you opened the hearing. There was no no applicant presentation. However, you did open the hearing to any public comment, which there was none. So you have two options. You can either require to go back to hearing just to hear the applicant essentially come out and explain why he feels all the improvements are completed. And I think you did all receive in your packet a copy of the engineering report that basically states that it is. So the bottom line is you could act on it tonight because you did open and close the hearing. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, it is a subdivision, that's why we're required to have a public hearing on a bond. Usually we don't have to have this
I'll
public
give you a
hearing.
quick overview if you want, basically what the items were that were bonded, if you want to act
Yeah,
on
why
it.
don't we see if there's a motion first, then if we are. you know,
Okay.
Assuming someone makes the motion, we can take that up. Is there a motion, anyone, to, on this item?
Yeah, I'm
Commissioner Kennelly has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jacobson has seconded.
Okay, just again to refresh your memory about this application, on April 26, 2011, TPZ approved this two-lot subdivision. The bonded improvements included drainage, curbs, street trees, ramps, monuments, sidewalk, and site stabilization. As you know, we have received a report from the engineering department, and it recommends 100% release. As a matter of fact, there was a 50% release on this prior, so this remaining $12,653 would be the second half of that. And again, it has been inspected by the engineering department, and all those items have been completed.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this item? Any member of the commission?
I mean, it is a regulation that they come to do a public hearing on a subdivision as opposed to a special permit. We've never had one not show up if they want their money. On the other hand, it wasn't properly noticed and no public showed up. And I'd also say that the first time they requested a 50% release, we denied it because there was a bunch of things that engineering said they hadn't done, even though we were recommending, and we denied that. And then I think they did everything. So even though there was no public hearing, I guess I'd be inclined to.
Yeah, I
release
mean,
the
I don't want you to, there was a hearing, and remember, the reason for the hearing is more for any public.
Right.
If they have any issues at all with any of the improvements or
Yeah.
stabilization
It hasn't
to
been
come, and it was noticed properly, so people could, even if there was no applicant per se at the meeting.
Right.
You still open the hearing, so anybody would have a right to talk.
Yeah, the presentation is usually all the work is done, can I have my money back? And
Right.
we didn't get that.
Assuming no one has any questions of the applicant as well. Commissioner Jacobson?
Seeing that engineering has given its approval for the release, I would see no reason not to vote on it tonight and vote in favor of it.
Any further discussion by any commissioner? Hearing none, all in favor of 160 Woodrow Avenue, request of Harbor Bonds LLC for a release of a $12,653 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in a B zone, public hearing January 10, 2012. President Leclerc, Barrett, Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner, Alessi, Parker, and Valera. Commissioner Valera is on the vote on this one, I believe, correct, for Commissioner Suter?
Yes.
Yes.
And everyone else was here. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Next item, 1233 South Pine Creek Road, special exception application of 16 Holdings LLC pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling in the floodplain zone. Public hearing January 10th, 2012. Expiration date March 15th, 2012. Same commissioners present. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Jacobson has moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Barrett has seconded. Any discussion? Let's have a presentation.
Okay, just to refresh your memory who was presented at the hearing, this property is located in our floodplain zoning district. A residential development is permitted subject to securing a special exception permit, and as you heard at the hearing, the proposed construction must be consistent with our R2 residential zoning design requirements. This property was formerly the site of a ranch-style single-family home constructed in 1935. The home was not FEMA compliant and had some structural defects. As a result, the applicant has removed the house, the old structure, and now is seeking approval to construct a new single-family home. The proposed new home will be FEMA compliant, which essentially is its first floor elevation will meet the FEMA elevation requirements and will comply with the relevant R2 district zoning requirements. The lot size required in an R2 zone is 14,000 square feet. This lot is a pre-existing non-conforming lot of 7,189 square feet. However, all other design requirements are to be met. The proposed home coverage is actually less than the demolished home. Subject to this special exception, the commission must find that the location, type, character, and size of this home is in harmony with and conforms to the appropriate and orderly development of the town in this neighborhood, and not hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent properties or impair its value. So again, as reported and represented in the plans that were submitted, all the other R2 requirements are met, everything from coverage, bulk, setback, height, location. The only thing that is different is the existing non-conforming size of the lot. But there was no waiver granted for the house construct, or proposed house construction location.
Thank you. Is there any discussion by any member of the commission? Commissioner Wagner?
Sure, I thought this was a good application. I thought it was well presented. I thought the materials were complete and clear. So I'm in favor of this. I think this is going to be a good improvement as well to replace an existing dwelling which was obviously in a state of disrepair.
Thank you. Any further discussion by any member of the commission? Commissioner Jacobs and then Jacobson.
I just keep looking back on it, this application, and saying it doesn't meet our requirements. And if it doesn't meet our requirements, we have these requirements for a reason, so I will not be supporting it.
Commissioner Jacobson.
I think it's a good application. I think that it meets FEMA requirements, and it grandfathered in on the lot, and I will be supporting it.
Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, same commissioners voting. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Commissioner Jacobs opposed. Abstentions? Item carries. Next item, 278 Meadow Street. Special permit application of 278 Meadow Street LLC for an office structure in a design commercial district. Public hearing January 10th, 2012. Expiration date March 15th, 2012. Same full commission present. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve it.
Mr. Barrett has moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Jacobson is seconded.
Again, just to refresh your memory what was presented at the hearing, the applicant owns and operates two Fairfield businesses, the Fairfield Stone and Landscaping Supply Company and the Fairfield Pools business. The Fairfield Stone Landscaping Supply currently operates at the existing property and utilizes the existing building as shown on the site plans that you received for its showroom, sales area, and office. Portions of the area of the building are also utilized for clerical and product storage associated with the business. The applicant wishes, and this applicant is to relocate the offices of the Fairfield Pool to the property at 278 Meadow Street. The property is located in a design commercial district, and this use is permitted pursuant to securing a permit from this commission under section 12(4)(3) and also section 25. The offices of the Fairfield Pool Association will be located in a proposed new trailer structure. It will be used solely for the Fairfield Pool as an office. The applicant and one other employee will manage the business and occasionally meet with customers there. The total square footage of this new structure is 1,556 square feet. 5 parking spaces have been identified for the office use. There was some discussion at the hearing about identifying on-site parking for the existing use. Pursuant to section 28.613, the number of parking spaces required for the existing use would be 1 space for each 1 and 1/4 employees. So what I would recommend is, if you were so inclined to approve this, that you condition it on receiving a revised site plan and letter of intent, essentially describing the number of employees and identifying the number of parking spaces on a site plan where they would be located on the site. That's pretty much what was represented here.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this item? Commissioner Wagner.
Thanks. So during the hearing, we were presented with a data sheet on the prefabricated office building that they were going to be installing. The data sheet it's a mobile unit on wheels. The applicant affirmed during the hearing that it was going to be a permanent structure built on a foundation. And so if that's not clear in the plans, I'd like to make it a condition of approval that it be a permanent structure built on a foundation. I believe that this permanent structure built on a foundation is also going to have the sewer hookups and meet our regulations in terms of, restrooms and et cetera. So if that's not clear, I want that to be clear, that this is not a temporary facility.
Mr. Chairman, I could, as mentioned at the hearing, this will also require a Fairfield building permit.
Right.
So needless to say, we wouldn't be able to establish it until they receive that permit, which, no question, would take care of all the electrical and water hookups.
Just so I'm clear, Commissioner Wagner, with what you're saying, is you find the modular structure acceptable as long as it's placed on a foundation. It's okay for them to bring a modular unit on wheels, place it on a permanent foundation, and get the wheels out? They submitted plans for a proposed new structure. Whether they bring in a prefab office building or buy 2x4s and build it themselves is their prerogative, so long as it meets our regulations and such. The concern that I have is simply that somehow or another they will think themselves entitled to have some sort of mobility here, or some not a structure it's not a permanent structure, based upon their submission of the data sheets that show that it's a mobile unit, and I just want that to be clear to the record. Thank you. That's the clarification I was looking for. And Commissioner Wagner, would you also add a second condition that the applicant provide a revised site plan and letter of intent specifying the number of employees and the location of the parking spaces?
I would.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Any member of the commission? Any further conditions anyone seeks to impose? All in favor of this application with the two conditions as specified, one regarding the permanent nature of the structure, the second having to do with revised site plans and letter of intent as specified on the record for 278 Meadow Street, special permit application of 278 Meadow Street LLC for an office structure in the design commercial district. All in favor with those two conditions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Next item, 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University pertaining to an addition to an existing recreational building. Same full commission was present. It's in a AA zone. Public hearing January 10th, 2012. Expiration date March 15th, 2012. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kennelly has moved to approve. Commissioner Jacobs has seconded.
Again, refresh your memory on the hearing. The Fairfield University makes an application for an addition to the existing quick recreational complex. The recplex was constructed in 1978. The 33-year-old facility contains approximately 60,000 square feet. The university proposes a two-story addition of approximately 11,000 square feet to the existing facility. The additional space to be provided will allow for the construction of a cardio fitness workout area, along with increased weight fitness and stretching area. A new jogging track will also be installed, a new multi-purpose space created. The overall work will also include renovation to the existing locker room area and improvements to the lobby space. The existing administrative space will also be renovated. There will be no expansion of programs or enrollment associated with this addition, the purpose of which is simply to renovate and enhance the existing facility. The project will incorporate several, as reported at the hearing, and I think it represented in our plans, several sustainable design approaches. Several of these approaches noted would reduce the potable water use, minimize heat loss from the building, and minimize energy use. Additional info. There was some additional info that was requested at the hearing having to do with the structural integrity of the proposed jogging track. The engineering department, and that was submitted to the engineering department, received the info, and it has, and the engineering department had noted that the information confirms that the structural design is proper, is appropriate. We have that information in the record now, and again, they basically felt that it appeases the concerns having to do with the structural design of the new track and the structural evaluation of the existing structure.
Thank you. For the record, we have correspondence dated January 12, 2012 from Kurt Krasinski, Senior Project Manager at Fairfield University, indicating that the track floor will be supported by existing columns on the exterior side, the cantilevered over new posts on the interior side. It will be designed as a public space which requires a live load of 100 pounds per square foot. The track structure designed with this live load will be more than adequate for the occupancy defined for the track and its egress, and they indicate that they will be reviewing the project with the Fairfield Building Department and responding to any questions the town engineers have. And that's in response to some questions that came up at the hearing. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this matter by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor, 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University pertaining to an addition to an existing recreational building in a AA zone, signified by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. We have one item on the compliance calendar, 3671 Post Road, application of Michael Chanilla for facade improvements, design commercial district.
Okay, if I sent you the package of staff chemistry, this is the former Friendly's restaurant. There is currently extensive interior renovation underway. They converted this building to an upscale Asian restaurant, and they're giving you some proposed interior photos there. What this application is all about is to upgrade the exterior facade of the building. What they're proposing essentially is a new skin on the building with a stucco dry type material. And basically the existing roof of the building is to remain. They're just raising the height of the walls up to the existing peak and put a new skin on.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve for discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kennelly has moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jacobson has seconded. Discussion? Commissioner Kennelly?
My initial reaction is it's an improvement to the existing structure in the sense that they're investing significant dollars to change the look. On the other hand, the look that's chosen, it's not particularly architecturally a great fit. Not this section of the Post Road has any particular real clear direction. So it's more of a hodgepodge as you get close to the Westport line. But my initial reaction is my aesthetic reservations aren't enough to reject it. I don't want to damn it with faint praise, but that's my sense.
Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? Commissioner Jacobs?
This area does not fall into our downtown design district. If it did, this would not be being built. Not only that, I'm looking at it, and they've got lights in the front pointing up, which, as of right now, is not a problem, but hopefully soon will be a problem. And they're taking a New England-style building and doing something to it. We had, when we did our downtown district regulations, strive to keep the character, New England character in our town. This is outside that district, so I will probably have to vote for it, but I would hope that other people who are outside the district look to the downtown design district for guidance as to how things should be designed.
Yeah, it's a little Lego meets Greek revival. It's a little rough that way, but it is what it is.
Looks like a bank.
Yeah, it does look like a bank, but like a bank, made out of Lego bricks. It's not even like that's it's defaming banks we've got in town. Like comparison.
We have triple withdrawal.
I mean,
Commissioner Jacobs has a
No, this-
question to staff.
The skin that's going on there with the stucco, is that the foam with the stucco over the foam?
I don't know for sure, because it just says drive it, but that's typically how that's done.
Okay, so that when someone bumps into a corner, it breaks off, and then you've got a foam piece sticking out from the foam cement.
I don't know if anyone's going to hit the building.
You don't even have to, that stuff you can hold with their hand.
No, I think it's hard, but I think it's,
Commissioner Jacobson, I'm sorry.
Are the lights already present on the site, or could we make it?
Which lights are we talking about?
The lights here.
The lights that you
That
referred
pole,
to?
that pole is existing.
It is existing.
Yeah,
Okay.
because
You can
got
see it in
the
the
existing-
shot.
If you
Yeah.
look at there's another photo underneath that shows the existing.
And there's other existing light fixtures too on the side of this building. If you look at the current picture.
The sign, you may recall, the two gable ends, the two white gable ends had primarily signage on them. You can see the fixtures.
Yeah.
Very lengthy fixture on the front facade, and two individual fixtures that kind of shot up at the, what were, acrylic letters that did not internally illuminate. So there are some existing external signage.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Commissioner Jacobs. I would really like for developers to look to the scheme and structure that we laid out in the design business district for development outside the district. One of the things that we really strive hard to do is to preserve the character and harmony of our town, and this does not do that at all. So, it's going to comply with our regulations, and I'm sure that this is going to pass tonight because of that. But I don't want to. I would like to send a message that we'd really like to see New England style development in our town of Fairfield.
Thank you. Commissioner Barrett and then Commissioner Jacobson.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this application. It is replacing a restaurant that's not used with a restaurant. Our town has become an attractive place for restaurants, for dining, especially outdoor dining. I think that's good. Again, I'm not an analysis of markets. I don't know how many Japanese restaurants we can support. We certainly have a lot of them now. But if people want to keep coming in and improving buildings and putting in new restaurants, I think that's great. And I'm in favor of that. As far as the regulations go, this should be on our planning list. If we want the center design district and neighbor design districts to apply to the other commercial zones, it's up to us to do that. We can wish and hope that they did that, but they have no regulation about facade or lighting or doors or windows like we do in the district. It would be good if they complied, but I think maybe we need to take some action there. I mean, I'm not crazy about this design, but it is kind of a little bit of a hodgepodge next to the Westport border now. It'd be nice if that was developed kind of more uniformly. I know the, what is that? I can't think of the name of the plaza that's right in there that was the
Right.
the new one there. Yeah, I mean, that looks good, and I wish that this were the same, but I can't vote against it just as I wished it looked good. Unless somebody has a good compelling reason to show that.
And that's something we probably should take up. Commissioner Barrett is right, as part of our plan.
Yeah.
We talked about, we did planning last week. We accomplished quite a bit, I think, with certain regulations, making changes, proposed changes, is when we look at the corridor from Mill Plain Road to Southport 95, and we consider actually going all the way to the Westport border while we're looking at it. If we're going to be extending our design from downtown, our design guidelines, we're calling it the Gateway West. We should continue from Mill Plain Road probably all the way to Westport at this point. And talk about design guidelines, streetscaping, our vision on a go-forward basis to extend the downtown area for the town, which would help both the residents, the town, and the businesses moving in there to have guidance and to attract people to them. So, Commissioner Jacobson?
I agree with the comments that my colleagues have made, and I don't want to repeat them, but I will vote for it too, but it definitely is different. The facade is different, and it won't fit into the town, but I will support it.
Any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of compliance application 3671 Post Road, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. This concludes the executive session of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. For the members of the public, we have one item on public hearing this evening, 120 and 144 Tuller Road subdivision application. We have to reconfigure the room, so we will stand in recess for about 5 minutes. Once we reconfigure, we will be. Town of Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission, public hearing, January 24th, 2012. The meeting will now come to order. We have one item on the agenda for this evening, specifically 120 and 144 Tuller Road, subdivision application of Christopher Coco, Mal Garzada, Piekarski, and Jack and Mary Lou Casper for 8 lots in an R3 zone. Just so the people in the audience know how we proceed tonight, the applicant goes first. They do a presentation to the commission. They call upon any experts or other witnesses they'd like to present evidence to us. The commission can ask any questions to the applicant at that time. Upon the conclusion of the applicant's case, we go to the public hearing. We give an opportunity to any member of the public who would like to come up and comment on the application. If the public has any questions, you could just ask us as the commission, and we have the opportunity to ask any of those questions and inquire of the applicant upon the conclusion of the public hearing. At the end of the public comment period, we go back to the applicant for any final comments. We very rarely will ever vote on anything, and we will not vote on this item tonight. Following the conclusion of the public hearing, we have a period of time to do that. Typically, we take a look at the sites closely and travel to the sites after the meetings. So that's how we will proceed tonight. Mr. Bologna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Michael Bologna. I'm a lawyer. I'm with Fitzpatrick, Frey & Bologna with offices on the Post Road. I'm pleased to be speaking with you tonight on behalf of Malgorzata, Piekarski, and Chris Coco, who are bringing you this application. Mr. and Mrs. Casper are co-applicants because my clients own the vast majority of the property that is subject to the subdivision application, but are contract purchasers to purchase the rear easterly portion of the Casper property. I'm going to hand out all my handouts first before I forget, and, so that we can finish shuffling papers, and then I'll go back and refer to them. The first thing I'm presenting is a letter from the Aquarion Water Company to my partner, Mr. Fitzpatrick, dated January 6, 2012, confirming that there is adequate water supply to supply the buildings proposed for this subdivision. Thank you, sir. Second thing I'm handing you for your record, and a copy for each of the commissioners, is the approval from the Inland Wetlands Agency, the Conservation Commission of the Town of Fairfield, with respect to this application in this configuration. This was granted May 11th, 2011, clarified on June 2nd, 2011. Third, I have for you a series of maps. They are either record maps from the records of the town clerk's office for the town of Fairfield, or in 2 cases, records from your own staff's files with respect to subdivisions previously granted. And I will be discussing this later in my presentation, but I thought I'd get this out. That is correct. These are additional maps. I will point out for the record that I have given Mrs. Sansonetti the full size of what I'm handing you reuse copies of at this point. And finally, I'm giving you a copy of an appellate court opinion in the case of Nicole Paul versus the Town Plan and Zoning Commission of the Town of Fairfield. They taught me at school, if you want people to listen to you, don't give them something to look at, but if I follow that, I end up forgetting to give you the papers. So there they are. I'll talk about them as I get to them. Thank you, I have those. I appreciate it. In an R3 zone, we are proposing a subdivision of 8 lots, 7 new houses, which complies with your subdivision regulations in every particular. We have about 5.2 acres of land onto which to place these 8 lots, 7 new houses. 6 of the lots will be accessed by an extension of Little Brook Road from its temporary turnaround here to its permanent cul-de-sac here. The other 2 lots will be accessed directly from Tuller Road. All 8 lots and the extended roadway meet or exceed the requirements of your subdivision regulations. There has been no variance granted for this application. All of the lots are 20,000 square feet or more. They have a 100-foot square and more than 20 feet of frontage on a public street. There are 4 lots in the northern point. North points to the upper right on this diagram, and at those northern points, lots 1, 3, 4, and 5 have wetlands, and the 100-foot minimum square is outside the wetlands and outside the conservation easements. The Little Brook Road extension is 50 feet in width, with a turnaround at the end of a 50-foot radius as required by your subdivision regulations. The Conservation Commission approved this subdivision with conservation and drainage easements, as I said, in May and June of 2011, and those easements are also in the northern corner, the upper right on the diagram as you look at it here. After review of the proposal here and input from the relevant parties, this commission voted to accept the 10% fee in lieu of the dedication of the open space, and the applicants have agreed to make that payment. During the conservation hearing process, neighbors on Marion Road and Little Brook Road expressed concern about 2 issues, and those 2 issues were traffic and drainage. The applicants bring you tonight 3 experts who will address those issues, and those issues, again, traffic and drainage as required in your regulations. Professional traffic engineer Michael Galante of Frederick P. Clark Associates will describe his qualifications and detail his traffic access and impact study dated January 6, 2012, which is part of your record. Licensed professional engineer Barry L. Hammonds of Hammonds LLC, land surveyors and civil engineers, will summarize for you the findings of his drainage report, revised through December 1st, 2011, also a part of your record. Mr. William Kenny, a wetland scientist, will briefly describe his wetlands mitigation that was provided to the Conservation Commission in order to describe how that assists with the drainage issue. Most especially notable regarding drainage is that the construction of the drainage structures for this subdivision, if permitted and built, will actually reduce the amount of stormwater drainage to the north and east from our property. Let me say that again. If this subdivision is approved and these drainage structures are constructed, the amount of stormwater leaving this property will actually be reduced in a 2-year, a 25-year, and a 100-year flood situation, storm situation. So to present an overview of the layout of the subdivision proposal and to detail that stormwater drainage plans, I'm introducing to you Barry Hammonds of Hammonds Engineering. Mr. Hammonds?
Ladies and gentlemen of the Commission, my name is Barry Hammonds. I'm a licensed surveyor, a registered professional engineer in the state of Connecticut and in New York. My offices are here in Fairfield, right on Kings Highway. We developed the subdivision, we developed the grading plan, and in doing that, our main concern in meeting with the town officials is the drainage. Very clearly, there's anecdotal evidence, and the neighbors have spoken at the conservation hearings in terms of the difficulties of drainage. So we focused primarily on that. And then the guidelines that we used was both the State of Connecticut Drainage Manual and then also the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. So we have 3 concerns just strictly from a drainage standpoint that we wanted to address. One is the volume of stormwater. If you have what it currently is, a wooded hillside, and you're going to take most of the trees down, and you're going to pave, and you're going to put driveways, and you're going to put roofs, there's going to be more water running off that land than there is today. And yet, as Attorney Bologna said, there'll be less runoff when the mitigation infrastructures are in place. And that's what we've been able to demonstrate, both to my satisfaction, a professional engineer who reviewed this, and 2 professional engineers on the town staff who reviewed it as well. At the same time, we concern ourselves about volume. Probably equally as important, maybe even a little more important, is rate of flow. That is how fast the water gets going. As you can imagine, water that comes down onto this wooded hillside gets into the detritus of the bottom of the leaves, and the leaves of the tree slow it down, and as it makes rivulets through the ground, the water really never picks up speed. The velocity rate remains low. Well, now you pave it, and the velocity is amply increased. Well, we can't do that. We have to slow it down. And I'll be briefly describing the measures by which that is done. And then third, we're concerned about water quality. Biofiltration, which is what occurs now, is nature's way of cleaning water, particularly of the metals that are found in the atmosphere, especially in a suburban environment, also the petroleums, also the nutrients, such as nitrogen, for example, that once they get into a pond or a stream, toxify, and that's why you have algae blooms and that kind of stuff. Well, those are the types of things we have to remove. So we're concerned about volume, we're concerned about rate of flow, and we're concerned about water quality. In all 3 of these cases, we used best BMPs, best management practices, and we used what the state advised, and we also looked to other states, New York in particular and Colorado, and using their manuals to implement the BMPs so that we can state, as a professional engineer, in our professional opinion, that these measures will adequately address those 3 concerns. Primarily, the way that you address the concern of volume and rate of flow is by disjointing the watershed. I'm going to turn the page here. Now, when you look at this drawing, north is up. So east is off to your right and west is to your left. And what we have basically is we have the drainage prior to any development going on. The drainage flows from the southwest in a diagonal direction across the site to the wetlands in the northeast. This is the large pocket of wetlands that's to the northeast. And the water travels like this. To get there, it collects and then is taken by a pipe system out through there, and it ultimately ends up to the school off to the east. Well, what we've done is, at present, the watershed is uninterrupted. So the drop of water that lands here will ultimately, once the ground is saturated, will ultimately make its way down to the wetlands. So what we've done is we've taken individual homes, individual driveways, the road, and we've made them go into separate drainage areas. Basically storm galleries, voids in the ground, by which these things are caught. So this water from this driveway will go into this storm gallery. The roof leaders and the footing drains will go into these leaders. So this impervious area is taken away from the watershed, and the water is put back into the ground. So it contributes to the groundwater. So you have groundwater recharge, and you have a water quality, you have a reduction in volume of water, and you have a reduction in rate of flow. And that's essentially how this occurs because every lot has these functions. Then, before any development, the entire watershed goes to here. And what we've done is we've taken the water from the road, put it, this much of it into these chambers here, goes into this velocity dissipation gallery, and then into here. Second, this part of the water, which is the greater part of the water, will go back into this large detention basin, which is sized to handle, as was mentioned, a 2 through 100 year storm event with a 1.5 foot of freeboard, which is more than what is required under even DEP fairly conservative standards. They are conservative. So again, what happens is that by enlarging detention areas, by fragmenting the watershed, what you're able to do, and also by using biofiltration, which is what this will be doing, by recharging the groundwater, you'll be able to address all those three issues: volume, rate of flow, and quality. And all of these are the BMPs suggested in publications written by hydrologists such as myself and implemented as environmental scientists such as what I practice. So in this way, we will address those issues, and in the drainage report, which has been submitted, dated December 29, 2010, the last revision is December 1st, 2011. We revised it when the open space was removed, and because originally we showed this upper area as open space. And that's the first revision. The last revision is December 1st, 2011.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And it addresses the, in a tabular, it goes through a lot of technical language, which I'll not go into. What I would like to just suggest is the title sheet is page 1. No, they are numbered. Page 3. They're numbered at the lower right-hand corner. There's a table. It's a tabular summary of pre-development and post-development stormwater management systems. And we analyze the 2, 25, and 100. And
I'm looking at sheet 3 of 11. Is that, what are you looking at? Our sheet 3 of 11 doesn't have that in this package.
no, I'm sorry, sir. It's the 8.5 by 11s. It's the drainage report itself.
Drainage report.
Yeah, not the 11 by 17s.
I don't think we have that. Hold on a second.
I don't see a copy.
What is this entitled?
Drainage report. 8.5 by 11.
We have the inland what? We don't have that. We have a traffic report and the inland wetlands report.
Right.
Yeah, but
Is it part of the inland wetlands package? It doesn't look like it, no.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, we have my
On page 3 of that report, there's a table. It shows the runoff rate. This is the how fast the water flows. And it mentions the 2-year, the 25-year, and the 100-year. And now we're talking about the water that comes out at the northeasternmost part, in other words, into this pipe right here. What water comes into there? The 2-year storm, the state of Connecticut uses 3.3 inches in a 24-hour period. That's a fair amount of water. And then pre-development, before there's any development, we have 2.54 cubic feet per second. That's how we measure these things. Post-development, by our dissecting and recreating all of these internal storm galleries, we reduced that to 2.48, so it was a reduction. Similarly, for a 25-year, 100-year is 7.2 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. The last time we've seen that in this area was the 92 flood in Fairfield Beach. That's a lot of water. And there, if we had that amount of rain in a 24-hour period, what would come to that pipe would be about 16 inches, and that'll be reduced to about 12 inches. Excuse me, 12 cubic feet per second. A cubic foot per second, just to give you an idea of what that is. Imagine 1 cubic foot every second running someplace. It's about 700,000 million gallons a day. It's a lot of water if it's left to run. So and that's just one. That's one CFS. So by slowing this down, by removing 3.5 really cubic feet per second, it's quite a bit of a reduction. And then similar analysis is for the cul-de-sac or the road. Here, conservation requires us not to reduce 2-year to 2-year. In other words, we're not comparing apples to apples. Conservation requires you to take a 10-year post-development, and that has to be less than the 2-year pre-development. So it's a more stringent requirement, more conservative requirement, and again, we meet that requirement. The biggest thing about the inland wetland approval, it was given May 11, 2011, and then, as Mr. Bollinger mentioned, it was clarified in June. And I believe you have this. I'm looking at the May 11th. It's Town of Fairfield, Conservation Commission, the Wetlands Agency. What I'd like to draw your attention to is on page 13. And it starts off, additional agency imposed specific conditions of approval from staff memo of April 29, 2011. And these were agreed to by the applicant. Number 1, all stormwater detention and recharge structures and basements on slabs if necessary be located above seasonal high groundwater elevations based on the monitoring well data available for each lot or in common era. And then he mentions his results. Number 2, the professional engineer shall certify upon his or her signature and seal that all in common and individual lot stormwater detention and recharge structures and basements are above the seasonal high groundwater elevations. And no work on the homes can proceed until all of this infrastructure is built. So all of these stormwater, the detention basin, the outlet structures, the storm galleries have to be in place and operating and signed off by the surveyor. In other words, they've been built properly in the correct location at the correct elevation, and signed off by the professional engineer that they've been set at the proper elevation in terms of seasonal high groundwater prior to any home building to take place.
Can I quickly ask you a question?
Certainly.
Clearly, when you replace nature with man-made structures, there's little doubt that when first installed, those structures are going to follow the design that you've developed for them. My concern is the decisions we make regarding approval of subdivisions based on engineering like this are made not for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, 50 or 100, for the structure, the man-made devices that have to act in the place of nature. So that's a concern. I guess what I would ask you is what are some of the common if there are such, threats to these kinds of systems operating at the level, the optimal levels that you need them to, for this enormous amount of water that you're drawing off the property that before was dealt with by nature, these velocities. What are some of the concerns you have in terms of when something's designed, what are threats to these kinds of structures to see if they succeed? The same way if you were working on a foundation, there's certain things you would do with the foundation or a roof to ensure that they would have a lengthy period of time in which they would act in the way that nature would act, which is in perpetuity. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Certainly. The question is well stated. It's something that I've dealt with various inland wetland commissions and planning and zoning commissions throughout the state, is not only to address what are the problems that can happen, but how to maintain the facilities in such a way that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, they still work. Various towns and commissions have come up with different ways of doing it. A lot of them resort to deed restrictions, for example. It's difficult to put in place a hammer that's effective. What we are proposing here is that the 8 lots form an association. The individual storm galleries and that detention basin will be surrounded by an easement to the town of Fairfield. And that if the town of Fairfield feels that these devices are not being maintained, that they can then go in and maintain it and charge back to the association the prices that they have to do that as. We also worked with the town in providing the most easily maintainable and the most often to be maintained devices in very accessible sites. For example, for this detention basin, which is way at the rear of Lot 3, the main thing that removes the sediment and the trash is way out here in the road. And that's in the public road, maintained by public DPW on an annual or whatever basis it needs to be. So we've addressed and we've looked at those concerns, because those are very much concerns of mine.
So what we're talking about there would be things like clogging of the system over time that would happen. What about just the structures themselves? I mean, once dug or once put in place, I mean, is there a point where those systems are I mean, they're clearly not, they're not complex in the way that, say, a structure above ground would be in some ways, but they still have, there's still a lot of forces on them. You know, water's the universal solvent.
Right.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, what are these kinds of things you've dealt with in terms of the threats to these kinds of systems and what's built into them to deal with that?
Sure. They're basically made of concrete or plastic. And the BMPs of plastic, and I'm going to be very honest with you, we don't know how long they last. They've never worn out. And they subjected to rigorous tests. They jet at various temperatures. They freeze them. They unfreeze them.
Just so I can be clear, because I don't follow the history, obviously. This isn't a discipline I'm involved with. How long do you have history with this? The 60s, the 50s, the 70s? What are these types of more modern systems come online to be used?
For stormwater systems, it's about 1960 when we started doing this type of work, about 50, 60 years from now. For septic systems, they've been around since about 1920. Right. And those systems have, that's different because you also have biology involved. Right. The failure of a septic system is more biotic than structural failure. Structural failure, because there's very little loads on these things, they're usually just under grass. You don't have vehicles going over them. You'll only get structural failure if they're improperly installed, and that's one thing that conservation has addressed. The surveyor has to go in before they're covered up to make sure they're properly installed, and then the engineer has to go in and sign off on them as well.
What about something like a tree root? You know, one of the things I found is, in my own small yard, is that I have older trees, and there's still going to be a lot of trees in the neighborhood. Yes. What's the possibility there where you have, you're going to have those kinds of things?
Well,
are there issues?
Trees seek food, right. Not so much water as they seek food. I mean, you have the willows, but the trees are much more dangerous for septic systems because that's food. When you just have a void space and you have intermittent dosages of water, it's not like roots can get in there. It's like a hydroponic situation, if you will. It's not like they can get in there, and there's no soil for them to grab into. It's like just floating water, and the water will dissipate out. We will not have standing water in these galleries. They'll be metered. They'll flow out. They'll fill up and slowly flow out.
Well, what I'm thinking of is the shaping of the galleries as opposed to the possible physical force of just roots that grow over time as the canopy grows. Do you see what I'm saying? Is there any kind of interaction in that sense?
Yes, there can be. Yeah, for example, trees under a sidewalk.
Right,
The roots
that's what
grow
I'm
up,
thinking, where you crack a
this sort of
sidewalk or something, right?
Right.
Okay.
And each of these galleries has a manhole and an access manhole that you can go in and inspect them.
Right.
And that would be part of the maintenance system built into the association's contract, that these things would have to be maintained. What Fairfield doesn't have, and I can't blame them because the only town that does have anything like this is Darien, is when they form associations, they have to have a monitor maintenance plan in place, funded, okay? And the funds stay in place. They do it every 6 months for the first couple of years, and they go to a yearly basis. And a report is submitted to the IWWA, and that's kept by the staff. Well, that's work, and already they're overloaded. And does it work? Depends on who you ask. If it breaks and then it's fixed quickly, it works. But if it doesn't break for 10 years, and people get lax about looking at it because it's always worked, not so much. That's one reason, we'd like to do this, to get things above ground and open, because when you see something, when you see, the Dunkin' Donuts box down there, you're going to go out there and take it out. Right. But when it's covered up, when it's inside of a gallery, and maybe blocking a pipe, you don't see it.
Right.
Okay? And it's not particularly biodegradable.
Yeah.
But the idea of some sort of restriction, some sort of maintenance plan written into the association, that is the hammer here is that if it is not taken care of, the town of Fairfield has the right to go in and inspect it, and not at the cost of the taxpayers. It's at the cost of the association.
Yeah, because just to follow up that point about the tree root, what I thought of was when I visit Lake Mohegan sometimes, and you see the roots where they've broken where the quarry land is, and they can actually break rock, they crack rock, they come through rock. It's really something. And these structures, to some extent, they're plastic, aren't they? Or?
The galleries are plastic. Yeah. These particular ones are concrete. The ones between lot 4 and 5 are concrete. But in general, they're plastic. They're cheap. A single individual can put them in without a machine, and they last forever. And they do the job. That's basically what it is. But you asked specifically what my main concern is. It is a maintenance program with teeth. And I have wrestled with this, and I don't have a good answer. And like I said, the only town that I've worked with that tried to implement through deed restrictions is Darien. We received a letter, and I believe you have a copy of it, from Laura Pulley, addressed to Mr. Wendt, dated January 12th. And she has 12 comments. I'm not going to read all of them or address all of them. Basically, her comments concern the road detail, some of the types of easements. All of these things are easily taken care of. They easily can be conditions of approval. There's no big thing. One thing I'd like to point out, because I know the neighbors are here tonight, and I understand. Yes, sir.
I had a question on that. I've got
of course.
Letters.
Yeah.
I don't want you to address all 12 of them, but I circled number 5 and 6, where they asked for some clarification.
Yes.
Can you stand upon that here, or about the additional easements that they want to require over the swales and drainage on lot 6, 5, 6, and 7? If you could just talk to those 2 out of 12, I think that would.
Mr. Barrett, that's exactly the 2 I was going to talk to.
Okay.
I know the neighbors are here, and they're going to speak to their concerns about drainage and the impacts that they have felt in their own backyards and their own basements. One thing to keep in mind is that the lots on Little Brook, this lot here, immediately adjoining to us, is not in our watershed. No water from us gets onto that. This lot is in the watershed, and this lot, the wetlands extends into, that's the Cat's lot. And we will say unequivocally that the drainage of this lot will be greatly improved by this infrastructure. This lot will be improved, and this lot will be improved. Not greatly, but will be improved. What we're proposing is along Lot 6, which is this southeasternmost lot, there will be a berm right there, and on this side of the berm, on the west side of the berm, there will be a swell. So as the water comes down, it'll be caught and directed into the wetlands. Similarly, along Lot 5, and along this lot, the existing lot on Littlebrook, the water that comes will be caught before it gets to that lot and swelled. What Laura, Mrs. Pulley has asked is that these be made part of an easement, which is fine. We agree to that. It would be an easement to the association, not to the town. And the purpose of the easement is so that this homeowner could not, I don't like that berm, I'm going to knock it down, or I don't like that swell, so I'm going to fill it with leaves. So those swells and those berms would continue to function. And,
That would be insured?
because the easement would be to the association itself.
Right.
So the homeowner could not then go block the swell by dumping leaves or something. Or if they did, someone could complain, the association could then go on and clean it up.
So it would be part of any kind of legal
It would be a
documentation
restriction.
that would follow the home.
Exactly, yeah, it would be on the land.
On the land.
And
Right.
it would be a restriction on the land. The other easement that she's talking about,
Please stay on this one for a second.
Yes, sir.
How are you going to get the swale to
the
filter the
road.
water across the road? I see it on your drawings, the swales on both sides. How are you going to swale the street?
I'm not going to swell the street.
How are you going to get the water then from west to east?
The water is going to run down here, go into the gutter of the street, and come down to these catch basins, and the catch basins will bring this water to here. This water will start at the street and come to here, so this swale will not jump the street.
Where's it going to go again? Show us one more
They go
time.
into these catch basins that are right here, and basins go into these things, and go into the galleries, go into this metered structure, into the velocity dissipator, and then sheet flow into the wetlands.
It's going to go to the structure between 4 and 5 then.
Yes.
And how are you handling then the water coming down the street, the flow down the street? Will that go into storm sewers on either side of it?
Yes. What we have is we have two, what we call braces, catch basins. A brace is a catch basin on opposite sides of the road. So this cul-de-sac, the water will go this way into this brace, be caught in, go into this vortex unit, and then down this pipe into the biofiltration swell. The water that lands past this will go down into this brace and then go into this system right here. There is a small amount of water, that's why you push this brace back as far as possible. About this much of the water is unaccounted for and will go into Little Brook Road, which has its own brace system. Laura did mention, and I did want to point that out, that this cul-de-sac is temporary. The record map and their deeds show that that land is to be given back to those adjoiners upon the extension of the road. And the client, the developer, has the full intention when they push this road through of fixing the front lawns, curbing this, restoring these driveways, and in essence, turning that into a regular road, getting rid of that cul-de-sac. And then once the cul-de-sac is approved by the town, then the deed for the temporary extension, for the temporary cul-de-sac is relieved and given back to the people who own on both sides. She mentioned street trees. We do show street trees in one of these plans. We talked to the tree warden. He'd like Ace rubrum, red maple, and ginkgo. So we show those on one of these plans. I'd like to mention that in section 1.1.13 of the subdivision regulations, we are required to look at this for solar efficiency. It's kind of difficult, to be honest, because you have zoning regulations. You have a lot that can fit only in a certain way, and your house kind of has to fit in a certain way. But in this particular case, basically what you want is you want the homes to face the long part of the house to face either south or north, and that way it gets the full band of sunlight. The sun, of course, travels along the lower part of this band, and you can see the lots, either the front of the house is exposed or the back of the house, the length of the house is exposed. So in that way, we apply the section of the subdivision regulations. Finally, we have a letter, 16th December 2011, from Ed Tarife of the Sewer Commission. He asked that a separate sanitary sewer plan and profile with structures be submitted for review. I'm a little puzzled at this because we actually gave him that in January of 2010. So he may have misplaced it or just forgot about it, but we've taken care of that. And then very quickly, I just wanted to show you two other features. Before I do forget, this is the school, the old school, and that's going to be preserved. So that's the historic portion of this site is that school. So this will not be torn down. There was an addition to the school that was done later that has already been removed. Mr. Cannella, this is also in response, in part, to your question. As you know, once you disturb a site, it's horrific. There's dirt all over the place, and you get a bad storm and just wreaks havoc. And we have full sets of soil erosion sediment control plans, which are part of your set. You've seen them. They've all been reviewed. They meet BMPs, etc. And they also are subject to maintenance plans that are part of the written description. But also what we decided to do, in speaking with Ms. Jacobson and Mr. Steinke, is we developed this phase plan. But it's also phased from a soil erosion sediment control plan. In other words, we don't just put, okay, now we're going to build a road, so we're going to put the silt fence here and the hay bales here. What we're going to do is we're going to anticipate that while the soil is disturbed, there will be extra runoff, which means we want extra attenuation, we want extra mitigation for that short period of time, 9 months, a year. And so really what's going to happen is lot 5, which is here, will be turned into a large detention basin that'll handle, it'll be basically a sed pond, a sedimentation pond. It'll be open to the air, and so this thing will ultimately be filled and go away once we're ready to do the construction. But what I wanted to make sure you understood is that all this infrastructure will be in place, but it will be slightly different at the beginning than when everything is buttoned up, everything is seeded, and everything is grown. And so that this is part of the set of how this stuff will be put in place. So we're taking great care to utilize the BMPs, and we've been conservative, both in the numbers that we used. There are factors of safety that are about 2 in generating the numbers, generating the calculations, and we've been careful. in addressing the concerns, because we have the exact same concerns for our neighbors. We certainly do not want anything adverse to affect our neighbors. And that's why this design has been so carefully brought to you. So if there's any questions, you can hold them for later, or yes, Mr. Grant?
I just want to ask you this, Mr. Henderson, since you're up and your firm's name is on these plans that we've received. So if it's not you and Mr. Bologna needs to answer, we can just defer to him. I'm just interested in the maps, because reading maps isn't always my strong point. So just in comparing to the regulations, could you just talk about how the land on lots 3, 4, and 5 meets, how does the minimum square get achieved on those lots? Because our regulations in section 31.2.21 require that it shall be exclusive of wetlands, watercourses, conservation easements, and really anything else other than setbacks. And I'm seeing that first lot is 100 feet wide, and I see a drainage easement there. So I'm just wondering how you achieve the minimum. If you could just walk through the minimum square on those 3 lots?
Be happy to.
Because Mr. Bologna, you said you achieved it, and I'm not seeing it from the plan.
What map is that you're going to refer to, please? So we can all get the same one here in our sets.
Sheet 3, 11.
Thank you.
It's the cleanest sheet we have.
The lot square has 2 conditions. It's 100 feet square.
Yeah.
It also has to touch the front setback or be in front of the front setback. Now, Mr. Resch, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that it can't include anything by which you cannot build on it. Now, you can't build into the setbacks. So our understanding is the square can extend into the setbacks because you can't build on them anyways. So by restricting the easements, especially between lots 4 and 5, the easements to the setback lines, then the square can go to the full length. On lot 3, this is the setback line, and that line right there, you see that double, I don't know, not a graphics artist, but that type of line is the square for lot 3. It just touches the front setback line. There's that same line type for the square for lot 4. And if you notice, it does not go into, this is the conservation easement, that heavy line, does not go into that. Similarly, for lot 5, the square comes down here, and again, just lunges up against the conservation easement line, but does not go into it. So it does not go into conservation easement, it does go into the setbacks. But the setbacks are already, you can't build in them anyways.
Isn't there a drainage easement on lot 5? That's what I'm missing.
Yes, there is.
That's different than a conservation easement.
That's my understanding.
Right.
I think Mr. Bologna can speak to that better. My understanding is that as long as the easement is not a conservation easement or an easement that precludes you from using it for anything else, like a right-of-way for someone else's lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it does say any other restriction other than setbacks, so.
And so that's why we have, we can't build on that anyways. You can't build on easement, you can't build on, but it doesn't specifically say drainage, storm easements. So our understanding is that the square can include drainage easements as long as they do not go beyond the setback lines.
Okay. Thank you. One other question, just while I got you and that map up there. I'm going to apologize for a second. Just look at my notes. Again, the same 3 lots. Again, just looking at these maps, just pictorially, there's a huge conservation easement on these lots. It looks to me, and the lot calculations were given, but what percentage of that lot is actually, especially lot 5, is not conservation easement? It seems like it's way over 50% is easement.
It is probably, I'm sure it is.
I mean, I know.
But you have to meet 20,000 square feet exclusive of any wetlands or conservation easement. In other words, you can't use any wetlands to meet that minimum lot area requirement.
That was my understanding too, but I mean, it says lot 5 is 35,991 square feet. Where is the 35,991 square feet?
It includes that's not your net lot area.
Right, that's not the net lot area. What's the net lot area is what I'm just having a trouble time seeing 20,000 square feet there. You know, visually I see 35,000 and it looks like most of it is conservation easement,
So
so
how do you get that right?
it doesn't seem like it's 20,000 of net lot area.
Let me see if I can find it.
Okay.
The surveyor provided that.
31,221.
But I'll let him do it.
Do you see where the 20,000 is? It looks like one of this one.
I thought it would be provided on sheet 2 of 11. It's not. I can provide those calculations. The net will be 20,000.
The lot area is greater than 20,000 for all those lots.
That's correct.
It's under lot 5. 35,091 square feet over in here somewhere in the legend.
Yes.
What exactly is 35,000 square feet? The entirety of lot 5?
Yes, sir.
Including this, so, you know, this...
Draw the outlines.
Are we talking this entire thing is 35,000?
That's correct, sir.
But it looks like much more than the majority of it is conservation.
It looks like 2/3 of it is
Two-thirds
conservation.
right, so 2/3 of 35,000.
That means you're talking 12,000.
How do you get to 20,000?
No, I agree. It doesn't look like, I know it's checked and double-checked and triple-checked. It's have to do this. I will provide those calculations.
If you could, because looking at the other lots, looking at lot 2 is 20,000, looking at lot 6 is 20,000. If you overlay 6 or 2 on top of 5, they far exceed the shape of 5.
Yeah.
5 is half the size of lot 2.
I agree.
Okay.
I will provide that calculation. Visually, I agree. That's what I say. I agree with you. Now, if you have the regulations in front of you,
We do.
the definition of lot area,
You want to look at the regs?
if you could just remind me, it just excludes pond and wetlands, right?
I'm reading for the record for 31.2.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, here we go. 31.2.21, area lot, lot area and shape. The second paragraph, areas consisting of rivers, ponds, lakes, or marsh shall not be used for compliance with more than 25% of the minimum lot area requirement and shall not be included in the calculation for lot coverage in bulk. Land in a zoning district having a higher lot area requirement shall not be used to satisfy a lot area requirement in a zoning district having a lesser lot area requirement.
So it's not the conservation easement per se, it's wetlands. That is not marsh. And marsh, right. Yes, is wetlands.
And again, since I haven't walked back there, I look at the conservation report and it says that the northeast quadrant is a red maple wooded swamp.
Oh, no, we're not disputing it. It's marsh.
So it
It's
sounds like
actually,
marsh.
and Mr. Kinney will speak to that, it's pretty quality.
If you look at the back of the wetlands, it'll delineate the lot for you and leads into these.
Maybe sheet 4, let me take a look at sheet 4.
I think that's what I'm going to do in here.
Figure that out.
Sheet 4 or
Can you see it?
Grading and utility plan.
No, no, the numbers are. This is sheet 4 of this.
Oh,
And it's in the big one.
Yeah, must be modified.
no. This is going on.
That's a different drawing.
I think these have been revised because
Yeah.
originally we had open space.
Okay.
And then when open space went away, the lot lines just got extended back. But I will provide those calculations to you.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing, again, I didn't see the square in the easement, and I just don't see the minimum lot size complied with all this marsh and swamp back there.
I guess this is what they're draining into.
Yeah, this area they're creating.
So just barely.
I will provide those calculations for you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond.
And Mr. Bourne?
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the proceedings.
Oh, no, I'm grateful for the question.
Does anyone else have any questions of Mr. Hammond at this time? Thank you.
Did Jim explain that?
Thank you, Barry. For the record, Michael Bologna. I will say this, Mr. Barrett, I'm reading 31.2.21, and I'm seeing rivers, ponds, lakes, or marsh. And I'm seeing nothing about wetlands, I'm not seeing anything about conservation easement area. I'm also saying that those areas of the property, rivers, ponds, lakes, or marsh, can be used for 25% of that minimum lot area. So I think that it's entirely likely that once we've thought this thing through, because as Mr. Hammond says, this has been checked and double-checked and triple-checked. So we will be able to articulate for you how we comply, but I don't really think there's any real doubt that we do, in fact, comply.
We just need to see the calculation, because visually it wasn't making sense, and he did say that there was marsh back there, and the conservation talks about swamp, so I think it's more than standing water, this isn't just...
I understand that, and I will point out, because I have the benefit of Mr. Kenny here, a marsh and a swamp are not the same thing, so we're going to walk that through for you. I will say this also, in addition, this proposed layout has been exhaustively reviewed by the very diligent staff at the Conservation Department. And if you are familiar with our town, you know that this has been vetted, and the staff recommended approval to the Inland Wetlands Agency, which is not something that we see every day when we bring this type of application in. I want to take 2 minutes of your time and just have Mr. Kenny talk to you a little bit about the planting and the wetlands restoration. Not that it's really your issue, but we believe that it aids in attenuating this drainage issue that we have heard concern about, and I do want to just give you the benefit of that very briefly. William Kenny, please.
Good evening, I'm Bill Kenny, principal of William Kenny Associates. Our office is here in Fairfield. I'm a registered landscape architect, a wetland scientist, and a soil scientist. As part of the work that we did for the wetland permit process, we put together a wetland mitigation plan where we did some enhancements of the wetland area. Specifically, in this portion of the property, where historically there was a substantial amount of fill that was placed in that area of the property. This map is just an enlargement of this area. We're proposing to remove up to 12 feet of fill in that area and create about 4,000 square feet of new wetland. Probably historically was wetland below that fill. And we'll be taking that fill out. There's a section on the drawing here that shows this is the existing grade through that area. We're going to be cutting down and creating this level swamp area to mimic the swamp that exists adjacent to this.
Do we have these drawings you're looking at?
I believe they were submitted. I can't say for sure.
For the record, is this Maybe we don't have any colors part of the problem.
Yep.
Is this a wetland and buffer habitat enhancement planting plan
Exactly.
dated December 30, 2010, revision 1, February 3, 2011?
That's correct. So by taking this area that's currently sloping, upland area, creating a level area, we're providing an area for further water detention, retention, and renovation. So it'll help with that peak discharge, the velocity, it'll help with the volume, and it will help with water treatment. And I do not believe any of this additional benefit has been included in the analysis that Mr. Hammond's completed for the project. So this is all above and beyond the mitigation measures that he's designed for stormwater management. This area provides other habitat enhancements. I'd be pleased to go into that if you'd like, but that's how it relates to the drainage issues of the property.
Some of those habitat improvements.
They primarily come down to the what we call the geomorphology of the hydrogeomorphic conditions. We start with the water and the ground shape, and so we're bringing the land down to the water table. We're going to have a lot of microtopography, a lot of ups and downs that you would find in a naturally occurring wetland. And what that does is it creates different habitat types for the plant material. You have areas that are somewhat drier, some areas that are a little bit wetter, and then it allows you to plant a more diverse vegetative community. So you have a much more diverse community, which then is able to support a much more diverse wildlife community, insects and birds and mammals, and so.
How will you be dealing with invasive species?
Yes. The primary problems, usually with invasive species, they're sun-loving, and they're much more aggressive than some of the natives. So what we do, it's critical the first couple of years to get good cover with the natives. So if you get the ground covered and the natives growing, then you're way ahead of the problem. And so we do have a 3-year monitoring plan to ensure that we go through there once a year and make sure that there aren't invasives getting established. And we also proposed to go into the existing wetland, which is beginning to get degraded from vines. Invasive vines are a very big problem. All you need to do is drive up and down 95 and you see trees that are being pulled down all over. So we're going to go into the existing wetland and cut the vines and kill those vines that are smothering the trees and beginning to pull them down, and then ensure that they're not getting established on the plantings that we're proposing here.
How do you do that? How do you ensure that the vines don't regrow?
There's a couple different ways. One is to, when we cut them, using an herbicide that you paint right onto where the cut is on the stem. So it's a very focused and controlled treatment, and you're not spraying over large areas, and so that way you can kill the roots of the vine.
Thank you.
One final note with respect to this, I'm just going to quote from Laura Pooley's memorandum to James Wendt on Thursday, January 12th. The post-development flow rates leaving this site for the 2-year through 100-year storm events are reduced below the pre-development flow rates. I think we've made that point, and I just wanted you to hear it from the town engineering department as well. The other concern that we heard from the neighbors is traffic, and we have with us tonight Michael Galante from Frederick P. Clark Associates. Mr. Galante has conducted traffic counts at the intersections of Tuller Road and Fairfield Woods, and also at Merwin Road and Fairfield Woods. Marion Road and Fairfield Woods. He has stated these counts to you in his report, which is in your record. He's here this evening to testify concerning his findings, analysis, and conclusion, and I will call on Mr. Galante at this time.
Yeah, I think so.
Gavin Mike Galante, traffic engineer and principal of Frederick Clark Associates. We also have our office here in town. I would just summarize really a traffic report we prepared as dated January 2012. All the figures and graphics and tables that I'll show you are from the report itself. Purpose of a traffic study really is to analyze and determine what is the impact of any development. In this case, it's an evaluation of 7 homes on area roads. For reference purposes, this is figure 1 in the report. I'll consider Fairfield Woods Road east-west. It really isn't, but for the purposes of the study itself. Marion Road is here. Little Brook Road is here. This is the site itself. This is Tullow Road here and below. This graphic simply identifies the inventory, pavement widths, pavement markings, speed limits, and so on the area roads. We, of course, went out and did traffic count, as Michael mentioned, and I'll just reference some, but we did the traffic counts last spring. Schools were open, the field and at the park was in business when the traffic counts were done in the afternoon, so the afternoon counts include that traffic. The volumes on Fairfield Woods Road certainly include commuter traffic, school traffic, and probably everything else that uses the road. It's a very busy road, as we all know, and there is certain congestion at certain intersections, such as the Morehouse Highway intersection, which has stop signs. The volume on Fairfield Woods Road in the morning is about 1,000 vehicles. It's a 1 hour peak hour volume, 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, which was the peak volume. The afternoon, which was 5 to 6 o'clock, the volume was about 1,400 vehicles. So the afternoon is actually a higher volume. In the morning, the higher volume is going towards, let's call it, towards Black Rock Turnpike. In the afternoon, it's going away from Black Rock Turnpike. So it matches the Merritt Parkway, I-95, and there's some relationship between these roads and these volumes. Tullow Road carries about 100 vehicles in the morning peak, same peak hour, and about 125 vehicles during the afternoon peak. Marion Road has about 10 vehicles in the morning peak hour and 35 vehicles in the afternoon. The difference with the afternoon is it's picking up the park traffic and the games that are being played at the park in the afternoon. We made it was purposely done on days when the park was occupied. The next step was, of course, to identify the amount of traffic the 7 homes would generate, and we used a standard, and we discussed this standard before from ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, but 7 homes will generate, based on their trip rates, and I'll discuss that in a second, typically 0.7 trips in the morning and about 1 trip in the afternoon per unit. And we always discuss, well, everyone has a 2-car garage, so it must be 2 cars, but keep in mind the traffic study is based on a 1-hour period, and actually a 15-minute period within the 1 hour. But if you look at the volume of traffic on Marion Road, it's generating about 0.64 trips per home. So the numbers that we use in traffic studies that have been used by ITE for years, and really hasn't changed that much, does match reality. And we've done this at different places in town of Fairfield and other places over the years. But the trip rates we use per home, whether it's a single family or a detached condominium or attached condominium, which is a different rate, do match reality. And we happen to have an opportunity here to match that actual traffic volume to a subdivision, a developed neighborhood, to what we're using for the traffic study. So we have roughly, and this is just a table from the report table 4, we're estimating 5 trips in the morning for the 7 homes and 7 trips in the afternoon for the 7 homes. And that traffic, of course, is added to the roadway system. I have a chart here, but we just simply add that traffic to the road system for the morning and the afternoon. Of course, we have 6 homes using the Marion Road neighborhood, if you will, to reach Fairfield Woods Road, and the 1 home on Tullow Road. So we split the traffic between 6 homes on the Marion Road and the 1 home on Tullow Road. And we add that traffic to the roadway system for a future traffic condition. Our traffic volumes for a future design year 2013 includes the additional enrollment at Fairfield Woods Middle School. So it includes that traffic, plus a growth rate of 2% per year. The next step, as you know, is to really analyze and determine what is the impact of the 7 homes on area roads. And really, without going through all the details, adding 5 to 7 vehicles to the roads doesn't really change the results or the levels of service that we talk about all the time. This is table 5 from the report, and they're all unsignalized intersections, stop sign control. It essentially says that none of the levels of service change on any lane group or approach before and after, which is a no-build versus a build condition. And you will note that the Tullow Road approach to the Fairfield Woods Road intersection has a level of service E, in the afternoon today, and we'll certainly have a need in the future condition with the additional home on Toller Road. And that relates to a delay of about 40 seconds per vehicle on average. And from the standards of ITE, that's considered a long delay. But another part of the analysis is the volume to capacity ratio. One is capacity. That approach is operating today at about 30% of capacity. So to give you kind of a relationship of how it's operating, motors coming to any stop sign on Fairfield Woods Road or any other road similar to that in town certainly waits during peak hours to exit that side road. The left turn usually takes longer to exit based on gaps and separation. We all know Fairfield Woods Road. I live in town, so I know the traffic conditions on Fairfield Woods Road. There are delays along that road, certainly related to the Fairfield Middle School traffic, a different time for the Stratford Elementary School in the other direction, and somewhat related to the high school traffic at Fairfield Ward High School on Melville Avenue. Certainly have that in the picture, and that's included in the analyses. The delays you see on Fairfield Woods Road is related to a couple things. One is the traffic, the volume of traffic on that road itself. It's a two-lane road. It serves the community. It serves the entire town. It serves beyond the town. It's a road that's more than just a local road. The delays you see in the vicinity of Toller Road or Marion Road is directly related to the stop signs at Morehouse Highway, because you're stopping, you're waiting for a gap. Depending on the person that's in front of you or next to you or coming from the side street, you have to wait for that gap and you move. That relates and turns into a delay for motors traveling on Fairfield Woods Road. In the morning, it's mostly westbound. In the afternoon, it's more in an eastbound direction. If you go to the east, you have traffic signals, and you'll see the delays are not as much because it's more of a controlled operation with traffic signal operation. We looked at accidents. I have a chart that's from the report. I'll just refer to it briefly, but it's table 2 from the report itself, and the accident data is from 2008 through the end of 2010, a 3-year period from the town of Fairfield Police Department. And we looked at every road and every intersection in our study area, and essentially what this table says, in the 3-year period there were 3 accidents. There was one at Toller and Fairfield Woods Road. There was one on Toller Road in that section that's along the side frontage, and there was one accident between Marion Road and the Toller Road intersection. This data doesn't identify any accident concern that we should be concerned with. Certainly not in the number of accidents that you would certainly look for. If you had 5 or more accidents at a particular intersection, then you look at it a little bit further as far as how you can mitigate that. In essence, the development certainly adds some traffic to the roads. It doesn't change the level of service, which is our measure and the purpose of a traffic study. And our recommendations are just 2, actually, for the purposes of this development. One is adding a stop sign in the Marion Road approach to Fairfield Woods Road. I would suggest that with or without this development, mainly because of the park. You have people that are not certainly familiar with this neighborhood that might be using it. You want them to stop as they come up the hill towards Fairfield Woods Road. It's a safety issue. No accidents related to not having a stop sign. Many streets along Fairfield Woods Road do not have stop signs. I mean, certain ones do, boroughs and so on. The other comment I have, a recommendation, again, related more to the park use, because you'll see cars parked on the street when they're using the fields, is to have no parking here at the corner at the intersection of Little Brook Road and Marion Road, in the neighborhood itself. Because you may see cars parked on the road for the park, which doesn't have a parking lot on this side of it to serve it, and we just want to keep the intersection open and free for sightlines. Those are 2 recommendations we make. They're not directly related to because of the 7 homes we're adding or 6 homes in this neighborhood, but because of the park and the traffic on the side street itself. That's a summary of the report. I can certainly answer, or hopefully try to answer any questions you have now or later. How about now?
Here we go. Could you put the map back up?
The graphic one?
Yeah. Anything with the site on it will do. Now, I think what really sort of disturbs me about this, and I'm not sure you're the person to answer it, but I spent a lot of time at the site, and you're talking about vehicular traffic, and I'm thinking in terms of pedestrian and bicycle traffic. And the connectivity within the neighborhood, most of the action is going in this direction, and there's no access from the site to Toller Road. So they would be walking Fairfield Woods Road to Burroughs Road, where there's an athletic field.
Fields, yes.
There's also the middle school, there's the library, And usually when you have a cul-de-sac situation like this, the impulse is to get in the car and drive. So certainly the site plan does not encourage a good walkable neighborhood, and I drove around very carefully, and it seemed to me there were other areas where you could have that kind of connectivity with the community. Is that?
I'm not the person to answer the question, but
Okay.
I mean, obviously there are sidewalks along Fairfield Woods Road that serve the library, the middle school, and the elementary school in the other direction. As far as how it connects into the neighborhood itself, sidewalks or no sidewalks, people will walk on the street or on a sidewalk. I don't believe there are sidewalks on Marion Road in the
Yeah,
neighborhood
well, they would
itself.
have to go little.
But they would have to, yeah, they would have to go this way to come around, as opposed to cutting through someone's backyard.
Or unless the developer provided.
I can't answer that, but that's certainly a possibility.
Thank you.
Mr. Galante, I want to thank,
I'm sorry.
I want to thank you for waiting to paragraph 3 for the insignificance, so thank you.
I didn't
for
say
that.
it tonight.
No, you didn't, but it was there in paragraph 3, and I appreciate it. You didn't come in paragraph 1 and 2. And as we've discussed many times before, I'll just get this out, that it's a term of art in your profession, the term insignificant, in that it's strictly a statistical analysis particular to the area that you're dealing with related to these the traffic trip ends and things like that. That's where this terminology comes from.
It's to identify in words the impact of this particular development.
But based on those numbers, per se, trip ends and all the rest. But as Commissioner Parker points out, already this is a difficult, it's not a particularly pedestrian-friendly area. I run there at least 3 or 4 times a week, and it's very uncomfortable because what you have is the folks trying to get out, trying to exit these streets, flowing into Fairfield Woods. They are not paying attention to pedestrians. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been almost hit running because these folks are so primed to get into Fairfield Woods Road when they've got a chance in the morning that they're not paying attention to much else. They're just looking for that gap in that ridiculous long line of cars that goes from Morehouse Highway in the morning all the way, sometimes it goes almost all the way back to the bank. It's unbelievable.
Sometimes.
It really is something. But admittedly, sometimes isn't every time. But that's the case.
That's why I recommended this.
Right, absolutely. But I guess, my question really is this, one of the things we have to consider on site with the subdivision applications is, what does it do to not to what's surrounding, but what's right on the site. It just strikes me that this becomes a more dangerous area when you have when you're going to have 10, 12, 15 more cars that weren't there before for kids on bikes and people jogging and people trying to walk in that neighborhood.
That's why there's sidewalks.
Yeah, but the problem isn't cars rolling up on the sidewalk. It's not a bullet or something. But it's more this idea that crossing these ways because of the pressures on the folks who want to turn, are being increased. We know, as you and I have talked about before, when I've asked questions about this, there's never one particular development that somehow breaks the back of any artery. Almost always, when based on just the trip ends and all, it turns out that it's insignificant, or the delay in service is insignificant.
Well, in this case, it certainly is.
Yeah. Well, for waiting, in terms of the time, although it's already a pretty bad. It already had at peak hours already pretty bad.
Would you suggest that crosswalks be installed at every side road, for example, along Fairfield Woods Road?
Not
certain
everyone.
sections
Well,
have
not
it,
everyone, but I'll say this: if we're going to continue with the density that we're going to do here, we're going to do 8 homes here, for example. It seems to be some kind of traffic calming at the like a crosswalk might make some sense. I don't know, but
well, one traffic calming, if I may, is the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, a different condition would be making that a through road to Toller
See,
Road.
it's funny because
which
you
changes
say,
everything.
This is for me to ask, but the thing that was pointed out by Commissioner Parker that I think is an interesting question about theory when this comes to this is that you're right, it's traffic calming in one sense, but in another, what it does is it encourages, as she pointed out, it encourages more people to want to get into their cars. So in the end, the thing that is one element that slows it down, the other, to me at least, it may put more people on the road. But anyway, I just want to go over that point about what insignificant means.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Galante, while you're here, let's go a block to the east. Something that's bothered me for a while, and I thought that this was going to be resolved when the town built, or did the renovations to Stratfield School. The traffic light at Melville Avenue and Fairfield Woods Road.
Yes.
That light still remains to be I think, the last incandescent bulb light we have in Fairfield, as opposed to LED. And some kid's going to get killed at that intersection, or a parent pulling out, because when you're coming down the hill from this location, you look up, you can see the light at Stratfield Road, but especially for those of us who aren't in the area that don't come by that often.
Yeah.
You know, maybe once a month, if that. You know, I can just see people going right through that intersection because that's an old-fashioned light that we don't see anymore.
I can't answer the question, but I believe, I thought the town was replacing that.
Yeah.
Well, it's been in the process for several years, if that's the, I know it's not your,
It wasn't working over the summer before.
No, it's
school
not,
opened.
but it's working again with the old bulbs in it. And the question is, you know, since it is, that is old technology, those types of light bulbs, correct? And would you
Yes.
agree that they should be replaced with LED lights for safety?
Typically, when a signal reaches its end of its life cycle, it's replaced.
Would you agree that light's at the end of its life cycle?
I haven't studied it in particular, but I'm sure it's near that point, yes.
Thank you.
And it wasn't part of the school modification.
No, but it came up when we discussed the school. We were told it was going to be, and all they seem to have done is put walk lights up, which now gets you walking across the street with a light that nobody sees that could stop at it. It makes it worse, if
Good point.
anything. So thank you, Mr. Galante.
That's it for now?
That's
Okay, thank you.
for now.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Galante.
you.
Mr. Chairman, just
Galante.
briefly on that end, maybe there's cause for hope because that light is actually wrapped in plastic when I was out there this afternoon, so maybe they're actually doing something. I don't know. I think the takeaway from what Mr. Galante has to say, Commissioner Parker's remarks notwithstanding, is that there are 5 morning and 7 evening vehicle trips projected to result from this development. Half second, 0.5 second potential delays, and that the middle school expansion is included in the studies. There's another issue that comes up whenever I've dealt with development on a cul-de-sac in this town, and that is the issue of the number of lots served by the subdivision. And I wanted to talk to you about that. This has implications at 2.1.6 of your subdivision regulations. Cul-de-sacs are streets closed at one end, which will not be extended in the future. That's the definition of cul-de-sacs. And that is the reason I have given you that packet of record maps. And you can see the top record map is the record map that established this Marion Road, Littlebrook Road situation. And what you can see there is that both of those ends, if you will, of Littlebrook Road are temporary turnarounds. Neither is a permanent cul-de-sac. We are proposing to turn the western end into a permanent cul-de-sac, but the eastern end remains open. This issue has very recently been litigated by Nicole Paul with respect to her application on Mill Hill, where she had a short road that was providing frontage to only 2, which is, it's the no more than 10, but no fewer than 3, no less than 3 building lots in the regulation. And the appellate court talked about the extension of the road in the future. That's addressed at footnote 6 of the appellate court opinion that I have provided for you. And what we have here is the open temporary cul-de-sac at the east end of Littlebrook, which means that we're only counting the lots on our side of Littlebrook. And my explanation of this is that you've got our 6 lots that are being served by Littlebrook as opposed to the 2 that are being served by Tuller. You have 1, the 7th, the 8th, possibly the 9th here, but certainly fewer than 10. And so I'm going to ask that this be made a part of your record as well. The remaining drawings in that packet that I gave you behind the Marion Road, Littlebrook Road subdivision map The next two are the maps by which that subdivision was completed and those lots were put on. The following one is the Hunter Road subdivision over off Duck Farm Road in the Mill Plain area near Riverfield School. And I just wanted to show you that this commission has in the past and continues to approve these subdivisions where we have a temporary turnaround there up against the town of Fairfield property at the Riverfield School. Basically, that temporary turnaround is ending at a baseball field, as the east end of Little Brook Road does as well. And the drawings behind that show other examples in town at Limerick Road, at Flower House Drive, a very interesting one where Half Mile Road ends and Acorn Lane ends sort of within a 5-iron of each other, but both were approved with more than 10 lots. Because the temporary turnaround, there's a remarkable one at Toll House and Stevenson Road, and the last one is Maylands, which is a little bit different but conceptually the same and more recent in time. The point of providing you with this information, the point of giving you examples where this occurs is to reinforce for you what the appellate court said to you in your litigation with Nicole Paul, and that is a cul-de-sac is only that which will not be extended in the future, and the future means the future. It doesn't mean in the relatively immediate future, as might have been posited. So that we don't have that issue in this subdivision, and I just wanted to make sure that you understand that and where we're coming from on that issue, and I'm happy to discuss it further. Sir.
Yeah, I had a question. I had this question for you, Mr. One, and I'm happy you provided this. I haven't had a chance to review it yet, but I certainly will. I was concerned about it because I regarded this road as a cul-de-sac because it's closed at one end. And I count 7 lots on the current street, and you're adding 6.
Right.
To me, that's 13. It's no more than 10. I'm familiar with the Nicole Paul case. That was a minimum number of lots where, you know, this is 13 really exceeds 10 in terms of the maximum. But I'll have to look at these other
Sure, and
roads you presented. Because to me, the other end of the road, which is butted up against the park, is not going to be extended in the future. That's up against Melville Park.
well, I don't know that that's true, and if you look at the way that the appellate court handled that issue, and if you look at the fact that Hunter Road passed, and that temporary turnaround is up against Riverfield School, if you look at all of what I've given you, where it's a temporary turnaround on the record map, then it's a temporary turnaround, and it's potentially extendable in the future, even though in practical effect you may say, well, Half Mile and Acorn are never going to be connected because there's water in between, and Tom Stanky will be hunting us forever, and you'd have to build the Brooklyn Bridge over that rift. Nonetheless, both of those, Half Mile and Acorn, have significantly more than 10 lots, and it's not a question of do we think it's going to happen. It's a question of what is on the ground, what is on the land records in terms of what is a temporary turnaround. If you look as to what is going to be extended in the future, and what we have here at both ends of Little Brook Road are temporary turnaround.
You're constructing the new extension of the cul-de-sac. I mean, I'm calling it a cul-de-sac. Perhaps it isn't, but you're constructing that according to our cul-de-sac requirements in terms of radius.
Yes.
Is it not?
What we are going to build will be a cul-de-sac. What's there now on our end, the west end, is not yet a cul-de-sac. It's a temporary turnaround. If we get approval, when we file this record map on the land records, then a cul-de-sac will exist at that end. However, that cul-de-sac will only be providing frontage, sole frontage, to 8 or possibly 9 lots, as I showed you on that illustration. Our 6 plus 3 on that end of Littlebrook, or possibly 2 on that end of Littlebrook, depending on what you do with that last lot there. The remainder of Marion Road and the east turn on Littlebrook still go to that temporary turnaround up against the ball field. And you may say, well, we don't think that will be extended in the future, but that is undeveloped land, and it's a temporary turnaround. And under your definitions and under your policy in the past, the way this commission has always dealt with this issue, those lots then would not be counted toward the Little Brook cul-de-sac that we're creating. They would be counted toward that open-ended temporary turnaround.
Thank you for your explanation, Mr. Valone.
You're welcome.
Mr. Wagner?
Thank you. So in the Nicole Paul case, if my memory serves me correctly, there was evidence in the record that she had the expectation of receiving 26 acres along the abutting property, and it was her intention to subdivide that additional land and to extend the road. So is there an intention to extend the road here or not?
The answer to that question is twofold. There is not, so I'll answer your question flat out. As far as I know, no one's planning on extending that road through that ball field. But the Nicole Paul case was on its facts. I'm not referring to the Nicole Paul case saying, well, there was evidence of an intention there's an evidence of an intention here, therefore use that reasoning. What I'm directing your attention to and requesting your attention to is the language of the regulation itself as interpreted in footnote 6 near the end of that opinion, and also in footnote 3. If you look to the next to last page in the packet that I handed out, the regulations do not define the term future. Okay? So the court looks to the dictionary definition of future out of the Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. And the commission claims, your commission took the legal position, you may recall, that the future must be interpreted to mean immediate or reasonably foreseeable. But the regulations do not include that additional language. And so we're going to construe the language strictly because they are in derogation of property rights of the property owner. So where you simply say not extended in the future, we step out into the unforeseeable future. And that's why you have these temporary turnarounds supporting significantly more than 10 lots. If you look in the packet of approved subdivisions, for example, the next to last one, the Dover Park Estates Incorporated, those temporary turnarounds were supporting more than 80 lots, I believe, on that Y-shaped, dead-end, tuning forks set of streets. And that was permitted because those were temporary turnarounds, as I understand it, assuming that this regulation was in place in 1957, which I believe it was. That property now is a condominium, the property to the left or to the southwest, if you will, is now a condominium. And that's part of the common element of that condominium. Those roads can never be extended, but this approval was granted with the idea that those were temporary turnarounds. And so that's the concept I'm getting to. The reason I gave you Hunter Road, which is the fourth one down, is that we have Riverfield School over there at the end of Hunter Road, but Hunter Road is supporting a significantly greater number of lots than the 10.
Sure. If we take the interpretation that the future is the future and we don't know what's going to happen in the future, wouldn't it essentially gut the regulation to say that everything should be construed as a temporary turnaround because we just don't know what the future has to hold?
No, because once you've developed the property and you've built a cul-de-sac which meets your definition, right? So now you've got a building lot at the end of that cul-de-sac. Now you have a cul-de-sac that meets your regulations and your definition as a cul-de-sac. It's not going to be extended in the future.
Right, because in order to do so here, you'd have to tear down a house.
You'd have to tear down two houses, you'd have to combine two lots, you'd have to find a road on the other side that connects. I don't think you could get approval for that under any circumstances.
All right, so then just to be really clear, the proposal here is for a cul-de-sac.
It is.
Okay.
and I was never suggesting otherwise. On the west end of Littlebrook, we intend to construct a cul-de-sac that will be providing frontage for no more than 10 lots. Our 6 plus 1 or plus 2 or possibly 3 additional lots. But the temporary turnaround at the east end of Littlebrook, up against the ball field, remains a temporary turnaround, and therefore the lots on Marion and the lots on the east end of Littlebrook are not in our cul-de-sac.
Mr. Maloney, let me make sure I understand this.
Yes, sir.
You want to use the reasoning of the Paul case. The Paul case in which this woman obviously had a huge amount of land that she was, the family apparently envisioned as eventually being converted into building lots. What they basically needed to do was go around, move ahead and consolidate the properties. And you say that's the same rationale, the same logic that can be used here to define the eastern end of this road as a temporary turnaround, not as a cul-de-sac, even though it borders a park, and there isn't going to be anything. That is an end of the road that is not going to be made into anything else. And you're contending that what you have there, just because it's called a temporary, can be done, even those 3 or 4 examples that may have been terrible decisions by this commission dating back to the 1960s, allows it? I mean, when I read and I've only read through the case briefly throughout the evening, it seems as though what Nicole Paul had is very different than what you're talking about the eastern end of that street. When you have the eastern end of that street, it seems to me, is something that cannot be, by any reasonable standard, extended to anything. And at least in this case, what seems to be described is that there was an understanding by Nicole Paul or the relatives that this could, in fact, be used in the future as building. There could be a need for this to be a through road and continue.
Okay. Well, I apparently failed to make my point.
I guess.
Because I have never, this evening or otherwise, suggested that the reasoning of the Nicole Paul case can be used to justify what I've said tonight. What I said to you is the court's treatment in footnote 6 and in footnote 3 of the language of your regulation, that is, that it needs to be strictly construed, and we need to look to the dictionary definition of future in your regulation because it's an undefined term, underlies my analysis of what happens at the eastern end of Littlebrook Road. So I am not saying to you, Nicole Paul had this other land and we have this other land, because we don't have this other land. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm not saying the court's reasoning with respect to what will happen on Mill Hill Road when Nicole Paul does or does not inherit the Garofalo land does not apply here. That's not what I'm saying. I didn't make that point. I'm not making that point. What I'm saying to you is, if you look to what the court did in terms of construing your regulations strictly in accordance with the law of the state of Connecticut, and in looking at the definition of the future, where your commission contended that it needed to be immediate or reasonably foreseeable future, and the court rejected that position, that is the reasoning I'm saying to you, that you have to allow for the possibility that in a non-immediate, non-reasonably foreseeable future, that the eastern end of Littlebrook Road can be extended through that ball.
Respectfully, I disagree. The court did suggest that the future must be looked at not necessarily in the immediate sense as this commission had put forth, but the court in the Paul case recognized that there was evidence that it was in a planning stage. Didn't necessarily have to be in the immediate near term, but that there was evidence in the record that there was a planned extension of the road. And here, by contrast, we may not even have to argue about this, but there is, you're admitting there is no evidence of any intention to extend the road. There is a park abutting the end of the road. There's nowhere to connect to. And there's not even a vision for any extension of the road by you or anybody else. And so where, even under your construction and taking an indeterminate future point in time, is there any indication that the road could or would be extended?
There doesn't need to be. That's why I gave you these other examples, and these are not all of the examples that you found. These are the examples that I was able to find the best-looking maps for. There are 6 others. These, at least, it is this commission's position, has always been this commission's position, that consistent with what the court said in Nicole Paul, that where it's a temporary turnaround, it's not a cul-de-sac. Where it's a temporary turnaround, it's not a cul-de-sac. That means that the Marion Road lots in the east end of Littlebrook are not on a cul-de-sac. So that the cul-de-sac we are constructing only is giving sole frontage to 8 or 9 lots. So again, I brought up the Nicole Paul case not to say the facts there are similar to the facts here. I didn't say it, I'm not saying it. I didn't say the reasoning there is similar to the reasoning there. I'm saying that the court's construction of your regulation, contrary to what you contended in terms of what future means.
It doesn't matter what we contended. The court said that the future doesn't need to be immediate and in any, near-term sense. But there still needs to be some intention or expression of an indication that the road would be extended or could be extended.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. I disagree with you. There does not. If you look at your definition of cul-de-sac, streets closed at one end and which will not be extended in the future. So what you're really saying is that someone who says this is a cul-de-sac has to prove that it's not going to be extended in the future. And the fact that there's a park there, like the fact that there's a Riverfield school there, like the fact that at the end of Beaumont Street, at the end of Gorham Road.
And I get your point, but the fact that there's a house here is the same thing. Because the owners of those lots might one day decide that it's in the best interest of the town to knock down their houses and build and extend the road. So it's possible. It could happen in the future. Your construction and your argument just leads to an implausible result that guts the statute, that guts the regulation. Every road in this circumstance would be considered a temporary term.
My construction and my position here this evening is exactly the position that this commission has consistently taken. This is not something I invented that said, oh, let's figure out a way to dance around the regulations. This is what you do. This is what you have historically done. This is why I have given you these examples. This was not our idea. This is how you treat this.
Okay. Well, we have been recently been provided with additional guidance by the Court of Appeals.
Yes, sir.
And the members of this commission are not those of 1960, 1970, 1980.
Understood. Yet the members of this commission, as they are as it is constituted in January of 2012, are bound by the subdivision regulations that are in place when we come before you. And the court, if not the commission, the court is going to construe that definition in accordance with the law of the state of Connecticut. I submit to you that in your role as planning commission, you should do the same.
Thank you, Vern.
One
Sir.
more, I don't know that I
Mr.
need to
Barrett.
make a clarification for you, Mr. Bowling, but you're counting the 6 the new lots, plus 2 lots, plus, let's even say the 1 lot up to the Marion Road.
Yes, sir.
And you're building a cul-de-sac, it's on the record that you're calling the new turnaround a cul-de-sac, because it meets our requirements for a cul-de-sac turnaround in our subdivision regulations, and there's 9 lots. So the other lots really don't matter by your definition. Now, they're at a thing where there's a temporary turnaround, you say, and there's only like 5 lots or so associated with that one, or 4, depending on how we count the night. So even if that was a cul-de-sac, I mean, we're trying to deal with a double dead end or a double cul-de-sac situation, and I don't know, how our regulations really address that. I mean, to determine which you count for one street, which you count with another, but to me, Littlebrook Road still has 13 lots. You've got a cul-de-sac, and the other one may or may not be a cul-de-sac, or it's a temporary turnaround, but probably won't be extended, so.
Well, I mean, this does two things. I mean, I think you have to look at the lots on Marion, so I think you have to count those lots. I think you would count those lots. That doesn't help me, but I think, in all honesty, you need to count those, number one. Number two, though, if Littlebrook Road, and this sounds bizarre, and when I thought it through, I thought, well, that can't possibly be what it means. But if Littlebrook Road is closed with a cul-de-sac at both ends, that is to say, the temporary turnaround doesn't, what we've done is close it in with these two turnarounds, and we're considering that the dead end, well, then it's not a cul-de-sac under the definition in your regulations, because cul-de-sacs are streets that are closed at one end. Now, I don't put that forward as a reason to dance around your regulations, at least tonight. Maybe I do in court someday. But,
At least you're honest about it.
But what I say to you is that when the commission approved this with two temporary turnarounds, anticipating the possibility, that would, when the commission, look at the top page of that packet I gave you. When the commission approved this with the turnaround at the east end, the United States of America owned that property. And you would say, well, hold on a second, you're never going to build a road through the United States of America property. Well, it is no longer United States of America property. Now it's town of Fairfield property. You're never going to build a road through the town of Fairfield property. Oh, really? I don't have them in front of me, but I bet we can find a place that something used to be town of Fairfield property, and now it has a road on
Right.
it. So,
And I agree with you, and this is why I believe that the intention or some planned forethought of an extension of the road is what the Court of Appeals latched onto and what drove their decision in the Paul case, and which is also the spirit of the regulation. Now, I also made a comment when we were talking before that I don't even know that this is going to become an issue because of the number of homes on each side of Marion Road and the extensions. As you mentioned, you've got a cul-de-sac being closed at one end. That may be your best argument.
could be. So let me renew it. If you create this dumbbell closed at two ends, it's not closed at one end, it's no longer a cul-de-sac, we can put as many lots as we can fit. I want to go back to one other thing before I wrap up here, and that is the concern with respect to whether there is 20,000 square feet free of wetland on Lot 5 and elsewhere. And Mr. Hammonds is not able to give you an exact calculation without going back and using his computer. But I can say this to you. Look at the paragraph above, the one that Mr. Barrett's had reference to, where we talk about wetlands not being allowed to be used in the square. It's not wetlands that's not being allowed to be used in lot area. It's marsh, pond, lake, and river. I cannot, as I stand here today, tell you that there is 5,000 square feet of marsh and 15,000 square feet of dry there. And I think we're going to have to address that issue if we're going to get to the close of the public hearing tonight, how we're going to get you that information. But it's not wetlands. It's the wetlands line isn't the determining factor. It's what's marsh, swamp, or not swamp, marsh, lake, river, pond.
Is the calculation that you're making based upon restored wetlands?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Because I would be interested to understand that as well, whether you're calculating the area based upon existing conditions or calculating it based upon an exclusion of wetlands which your plans call for you to restore.
Okay.
If you follow my
I do follow your question, and we will, as Bernard McGurk used to say on the radio, effort that for you and see if we can come up with the answer to that question. I just don't have it at hand.
I would just say, Mr. Hammonds used the word marsh and said it was wet back there and there was standing water. So
Sure.
I don't know what the calculation is, I'm just asking for it.
I understand.
It may well be over 20,000 feet, I just couldn't
Right.
tell from the map.
Yeah. We need 15,000 dry, we need 5,000 other, We believe that we have it, but I do not have it at hand for you.
We'll probably have to leave the hearing open for that purpose, I would suggest, and then once that's submitted next time, if we have further questions, we can ask them, you can discuss it further, then we'll go back to public comment on that limited, redirect, if you will.
All right.
And that might be the cleanest way to do it.
I understand you're going to hear from a lot of other people tonight. I'm not going to take a lot of your time, but I'm going to remind you gently that as you sit as a planning commission, if we have met your regulations, we have a right to this subdivision. These people that come before you are the owners of property. We live in a country founded by smugglers and religious fanatics whose basic idea was to keep government out of our lives. The state of Connecticut, the sovereign, has given you the power to, for health, safety, and police reasons, regulate the land. You've written your regulations. They are your subdivision regulations. We have a good surveyor. We have a good engineer. We've designed a subdivision that complies with those regulations. You have an obligation under your oath to make a good faith determination if we have complied with those regulations. If, in fact, we have complied with those regulations after you have made that good faith determination, then my clients have a right to this subdivision. And it becomes your duty at that point to defend that right against the naysayers and the critics, and not the other way around. So I'd ask you to give your just consideration to this application, and obviously we'll address the comments from others on rebuttal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Bologna.
This is your copy?
No, that's actually,
No?
well, yeah, we have one in the record already, correct?
Yeah.
You can have that one back. We can just get copies of that.
We'll take it.
Yeah. Mr. Bologna, do you want your copy back? It's over with staff if you want a copy of that document you provided. We have one in the record already.
Drainage report?
Drainage report.
Yeah.
We didn't have individual copies, but it's in the record.
I can obtain an extra copy. Why don't you keep it for your file? Unless you don't want it cluttering up your file, I'm happy to take it away.
We got room. We have room.
Actually, if you could provide copies to the commissioners, that would be better. We don't have
Absolutely
copies.
be happy to do that,
Individually,
yes.
we should have their own copies. Or at least provide an electronic copy. Staff could send it to us. Email's fine. That's actually better if you want it.
That's fine.
PDF.
I will send an electronic copy to staff of that drainage
That's
report.
perfect. Thank you.
All right.
At this point, we'll go to public comment. Again, this is how public comment works. Any member of the public has an opportunity and a right to come up and address the commission. You're addressing us as the commission, not the applicant. You can raise any questions you have. It's up to the applicant. Should they agree to, should they respond to them? I'm sorry. The applicant can respond to any of those comments during their conclusion. If they don't, the staff, the commissioners can ask the applicant those questions that you folks raise. I just ask that you come up one at a time to the microphone and give us your name and address. So, public hearing, public comment is now beginning. Mr. Green?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, zoning staff. My name is Joel Green. I reside at 52 Stoneley Road in Fairfield. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross, and tonight it's my pleasure to appear before you on behalf of the Littlebrook and Marion Road Neighborhood Association, whose members consist of all of the residents of Littlebrook Road and Marion Road, and include the following, and I'll just use last names and addresses if I may, and that would include Civitano and O'Donnell of 98 Littlebrook Road, Bucefaro of 14 Littlebrook Road, Olson and Elric of 11 Littlebrook Road, Ali of 71 Littlebrook Road, Lukaselic of 97 Littlebrook Road, Benjamino, 55 Littlebrook, Smith, 33 Littlebrook, Castro of 110 Marion Road, Takis, 98 Marion Road, Kick of 53 Marion Road, Posta, 46 Marion Road, Bartholomew of 73 Marion Road, Crosley of 64 Marion, Trinkley of 103 Marion. So I appear on behalf of those individuals in opposition to the application for subdivision. I suppose I should say initially that my clients recognize and respect the rights of property owners to develop, and certainly the right to subdivide property, and certainly the owner of this property to do so. But we urge this commission to deny this application because, in fact, it does not meet your subdivision standards in a number of respects.
My client's opposition to this particular plan arises from their concerns regarding safety, traffic, congestion, flooding, and the like, but certainly my argument this evening will relate to the fact that the application does not meet your subdivision regulations, and therefore it must be denied. We also respect this commission's time. We respect the time that the fact that it is getting late. So what I'm going to do initially is just ask the members of the Little Brook and Marion Road Neighborhood Association who are in opposition to the application to rise, so the commission can get some notion of who they are, and I know a few of them had to leave. We have a petition, I think, so I can get that for the commission that I'll submit to the clerk. Actually, just to read the, it's signed by all of the members of the association, and it recites, "We, the Little Brook and Marion Road Neighborhood Association, hereby form this petition to oppose any efforts made by the owners of 144 Tuller Road, Fairfield, Connecticut, from altering and/or disturbing our adjacent neighborhoods. It has come to our attention that the new owners are considering extending our cul-de-sac in order to gain access to its property via the Little Brook and Marion Roads. Our association is completely and unequivocally against this and/or any similar proposals that would change and negatively impact our family neighborhood's structure, appearance, and safety. We are confident by voicing our concerns in opposition that the property owners of 144 Tuller Road will find alternate means to access their development," and I'll submit this to the commission.
Thank you, Joe.
I think perhaps at this time I'd like to introduce Sue Olson of the association, who has some remarks to offer to the commission. So.
Excuse me, my name is Suzanne Olson, and I reside at 11 Little Brook Road. One thing I can make clear after multiple hours of communication to everyone here, I'm not an engineer. I am not a scientist. I think we've all heard a very intricate system being proposed to handle the water concerns on this piece of property, as well as the existing road on Little Brook and Marion before anything even touches it. Our neighbors, it's not a pie-in-the-sky worry. It is reality of flooding in our area that is substantiated by various levels of investment that neighbors on Little Brook Road and Marion Road, myself included, have made to prevent water from coming into our homes over the years. And it's been disputed at the conservation meetings, as well as even being discussed here, that the intention of this development is not to bring more water, but to bring less water towards us. However, I do have pictures that I can give to the committee to let you know that there is significant stormwater runoff, which actually causes our catch basins to crest during certain storms. So our concern is that any ounce of water that could come from this development, if it's not maintained as it's intended to be maintained by an association, it's going to be a problem for us. We're not just talking $500, we're talking thousands that we've invested. The other area of concern, as a neighborhood, we have 13 children. We have 8 senior citizens and 18 adults living on Little Brook and Marion Roads. The age range is from infant to 86 years old. With this age range in mind, traffic and safety are two big concerns for us. Again, I'll provide the photos to you just in light of time. I don't want to bog you down, but they are pretty significant to see, if I may just. These pictures have been taken over several years, beginning from 2007, and as current as this past spring in 2011. And it just depicts how congested Marion and Littlebrook roads become from April through October due to the volume of traffic frequenting Melville Park. And some of you might immediately say, well, okay, that's seasonal traffic. But to that I say, and our neighbors would say, that's 7 to 8 months out of the year. And it's a long season to be worried about the safety and well-being of our neighbors and visitors to our roads. I would also say that the last time I checked, adding homes equals adding more cars. That's simple math. This would only increase the volume of traffic to Marion and Littlebrook Road, and those who would potentially be new to the neighborhood would experience this dangerous congestion as well. While we certainly support family and supports activities in Melville Park, it has come at a price over the years, such as the inability to get in and out of our own driveways, the inability for our neighborhood members to safely walk on our road, property and lawn damage, and even mailboxes knocked over. Our mailbox alone was hit 4 times, and finally on the 4th time, someone actually provided information that they hit it and replaced it. In addition, I can also provide to you a document that was given to us from the U.S. Postal Service. That they advised us via this letter last May that they wouldn't deliver our mail if our mailboxes were blocked by parked cars. We then had to purchase and place large orange safety cones, as you can see in one of the pictures towards the end of that original stack. And alert notices were placed on parked car windshields to indicate that we wouldn't get our mail if they blocked our mailboxes. You know, it's hard to believe, but it happened. Then they said we had to go over to Commerce Drive to get our mail, which I find absolutely preposterous. On another note, over the years, we have contacted the Fairfield Police Department to indicate that traffic is so congested, if an emergency vehicle, such as an ambulance or a fire engine, were needed to access any home or person in peril on Marion or Littlebrook Road, in particular during these months, or even gain access to someone who might be injured at Melville Park, it would be challenging if not impossible. In an emergency situation, seconds matter. Seconds can make the difference between life and death, as one of our neighbors, Craig Crossley, a Fairfield firefighter, is well aware of. In fact, Craig could not attend tonight as he is on call. Now, is it going to take an emergency vehicle mishap to prove that these developers and the town of Fairfield could be putting our neighborhood more at risk? Heaven forbid, when our fears come to reality, and an ambulance or a fire truck or a police car can't get immediate access to those in need. There will be nobody else held liable but those who were and are advocates of this overly aggressive development. I thank you for listening to this. I really hope that this commission takes into consideration our well-established concerns as existing members of Littlebrook and Marion Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson.
Mr. Chairman, just to understand the process, as I understand the Chairman's comments, we will present this evening on all aspects of the application. I presume that Mr. Bologna will have an opportunity to rebut, and I'm going to try to be brief this evening. As I understand it, the only additional evidence after this evening will be on the lot calculation, the calculation pursuant to 31 point, pursuant to the regulations on lot areas.
That's correct, at which time we'll go back to the public comment for you or any members of the public if they wish to comment on that additional.
On that issue only, though, and that'll be the only subject of any future. Okay, so I'll make my entire presentation on that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to sort of streamline this. I'd like to hand out copies of 2.1.6 of the subdivision regulations, perhaps.
And I really want to sort of get to this immediately because I think that many of the commissioners made some very poignant and excellent points regarding this regulation. And really, the argument by the applicant really leads to an absurd result, and as Commissioner Wagner had indicated, it does gut the effect of the regulation. And there has to be, these regulations, there's a presumption that there's some reasonable purpose to every regulation. And if you think about it, on several grounds, the applicant's position makes no sense. And really, not to get too far ahead, the applicant's interpretation of the regulation would be to the effect that you could connect an endless link of 9-lot cul-de-sacs at infinitum, and really that any street can be developed in the future and that sort of thing, and it leads to an absurd result. To simplify the Paul decision to its most basic form, really what happened with the Paul decision and the finding of the court and the appellate court was that, and again, to use perhaps a maybe inappropriate analogy, but basically this commission found that it looks like a dog. And that's all this commission found. What happened was this commission, in finding that the road would not be extended in the future, said that because this is a 50-foot turnaround, it looks like a permanent cul-de-sac, and on that basis, this commission found that the road could not be extended in the future, and therefore found that it was a cul-de-sac, and you could not only have 2 lots. This case is readily distinguished from that, because in this case, A, it looks like a dog because there is a 50-foot turnaround at one end of Littlebrook Road. It walks like a dog because one end of this road is now closed, and what the applicant proposes to create is a 13-lot cul-de-sac. And the applicant has told us that it is a dog because the applicant has said we are not going to extend this in the future. And to add to that, and I served on the task force that looked at town inventory and park space. And I think it's a fair conclusion and a fair finding by any member of this commission who has lived in this town for any length of time that we are so short of park space and recreational space in this town, and it is disappearing as this town is developed. I think this commission can reasonably find that the other end of Littlebrook, that the likelihood that this town would ever take a park that is heavily used, and to Sue Olson's comments, year-round and all the time, Littlebrook Road is full of parked cars because people are using this park like crazy. And unless there is more land annexed to Fairfield someday, I don't see the town getting rid of recreational space. And I think it's a fair finding by this commission that the other end of Littlebrook Road is not going to become a through road and in our lifetimes, or the way things exist now in Fairfield. So we would ask that this commission make the following findings. First of all, yes, just like Paul, the engineering standards that are here in 2.1.7, there is a 50-foot turnaround now at one end of Littlebrook Road. 2, the applicant has stated that it has no intention of ever extending the other end or the west end of Littlebrook Road and is creating this turnaround and proposes to convey this to 6 separate property owners, which further reduces the likelihood that this will ever be extended. Next, that the other end of Littlebrook Road is a town park, and I think that it's a reasonable finding by this commission that there is no indication and no basis upon which this commission could ever anticipate that this town would abandon or eliminate a park to create a road, particularly a through road in this instance. And also that this applicant has stated, specifically stated, that there is no intention to ever extend the west end of Littlebrook Road. And on that basis,
I would call, and I think what we ought to do is take a quick look at the documents that the applicant submitted, and I'm looking at the plans. And the first page shows the current configuration of Marion and Littlebrook roads. Obviously, and I think it should be stated for the record, that the logic of cul-de-sac roads is obvious. And the logic is that for purposes of public safety, for school buses, fire trucks, and frankly, as we've seen with hurricanes, early winter storms, windstorms, how many trees have we seen in Fairfield fall across roads and make them impassable in the last year? Everywhere after Hurricane Irene, after this winter storm that we had in October, just before Halloween, there were trees down everywhere. And if you think about it, if a tree falls on Marion Road and blocks access, or if the road gets washed out by a collapsed line or whatever happens, suddenly all of these people who live inside of wherever that occurs are blocked from access to public safety, or even blocked from access to day-to-day uses. Therefore, it makes sense to require that roads have a limited number of lots if they don't have two-way access. It's just a matter of common sense, and as Sue Olson indicated, this road is already overburdened with parked cars and already experiences issues. I have great respect for Michael Galante, and he does a terrific job, and I find his reports are complete and well-written, and he's a good guy. But in terms of the number of trips, and I understand these are models, but these days, I have noticed on my street, on any given Friday night or in the morning, I see people getting delivery of their dry cleaning, people getting delivery of pizza, Chinese food, to just say it's 5 trips during one period in the evening or 8 trips, 6 homes. My neighbor has they had a lot of kids, but at any given time, there's 5 or 6 cars parked in and about their driveway. And, so to just suggest, and I understand that experts deal with averages and probabilities, and over the larger sampling, they develop these models. But I think these days, houses generate a lot more traffic than they ever have in terms of the number of deliveries, number of trips, and FedEx, and people are buying online, and the impact of Amazon and all of this online buying is obviously that your FedEx truck and UPS are visiting your street several times a day. So there's just a lot of activities these days that generate more trips. Now, the examples that the applicant has given you of these subdivisions that were previously approved by this commission provide a perfect example of why this application must be denied. The first one I see is, the first one I would call the commission's attention to is Lindemer, and it's subdivision for Lindemer development, and I think that's the first sample offered by the applicant. I haven't had a chance to review these in detail, but I note that on the Lindemer, at the end of Hunter Road, there are 2 temporary turnarounds. I'm on the page at the bottom. It says 3995, subdivision for Lindemer land development. It's the first, second, third, 4th page in. So in this example, deep into this road, there are 2 temporary turnarounds that are noted right on the map. So by definition, at the end of this road, there is not what a permanent cul-de-sac as defined under your subdivision regulations. I don't know what the circumstances are with the town of Fairfield land. Is this Riverfield School? I guess it's Riverfield School. I'm not sure where it meets Riverfield School, but I note that a number of our schools, in particular, the schools that come to mind to me are Sherman, I think, meets with town roads. I believe it meets on one end, both ends, with town roads through the parking lot. So I don't know. I note that the senior center down off of Oldfield Road meets with town road. I think there are a number of schools that actually
form connections with town roads and form outlets for town roads. But be that as it may, in this instance, there are two depicted temporary turnarounds deep into Hunter Road, which would, I suppose, not bring this within the subdivision regulation on cul-de-sacs because of the temporary turnaround. On the Shadowwood, which is the next page, which shows map of property for Frank J. Dooley, there are again, deep into this subdivision off of Round Hill Road, again, there are temporary turnarounds shown. And I don't know what evidence was before this commission, but on the face of this document, it doesn't come within the subdivision regulation because these are temporary turnarounds. And again, your regulation, subdivision regulation, speaks about roads which will not be extended in the future. And based on this, based on the way that this is drawn, an inference could be drawn that these may be extended in the future because they have temporary turnarounds at both of the ends of the road. Similarly, Flower House has temporary turnarounds at both ends of the fork inside, and therefore, I suppose a reasonable finding is that it does not come within the subdivision regulation for cul-de-sacs. The Half Mile Association is the next page. Again, there is no cul-de-sac at the end of Half Mile, and it ends without any cul-de-sac at all. And interestingly, it does seem to meet the next page, and I am told that I heard Attorney Bologna suggest that there was a water course that separates it. I don't know whether a developer would build a bridge. I can't make that finding. But in this case, we have a different instance. In this case, again, we have an applicant saying that the road will not be extended. This is a permanent cul-de-sac, and therefore, there's proposed to be 13 lots on Littlebrook. And a reasonable reading of it is Littlebrook is a single road, and it will have 13 lots and a permanent cul-de-sac at one end. The applicant is saying, just look at this end as a cul-de-sac, but I don't think that's a fair reading of the regulation. And again, that would lead to a result where you could string together an endless chain of 9-lot cul-de-sacs. And certainly that is not a fair reading or interpretation of your regulation. There is a case which there's a case entitled Kreza versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Heartland. It was pending in the Superior Court in Litchfield. It's 2008 Con Super. It's Lexus 3181. The docket number was CV 846876, and I will submit this to the commission. In that case, there was it's a similar case in this Eastwood subdivision in the town of Heartland. There was a limitation. Some towns use distance for cul-de-sacs, and they put a linear distance on how deep your cul-de-sac can project in from a main road or off a local road. And in this case, what happened was the applicant, it's like this case, only they looked one way to satisfy the 1,000-foot maximum. They came to the end of this hammerhead and looked to the right, and the point was the entire road exceeded. It would be like Littlebrook using a length calculation. And the court found in that case that, and I'll submit this to the commission, whether two roads fall within the definition of a dead-end street and whether they can be tacked together for purposes of the 1,200-foot limitation are questions of interpretation of the regulations. What the commission found was they denied it because they found that the entire road exceeded the maximum length. The matter was reviewed by the Appellate Court. It was affirmed. I'll submit that into evidence, a cite on that. And again, it's Kreza versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Heartland. It's 121 Con App 478. I'll submit those into the record. I will note that this case is on review by the Supreme Court at the present time, and that has not been ruled on. The Commission will bear with me for one moment. I have a letter to the Commission from Mr. and Mrs. Trinkley, who could not be here this evening. I'd like to submit a copy to the clerk in opposition. And I would like to reserve, based on the, again, based on the issue of the interpretation of 31.2.21. But again, I would suggest that, actually, I'm wondering if I can ask a question through the chair of the applicant. Is that?
Well, you can ask a question to us, and then it's up to the applicant on his rebuttal with it.
One of the issues, and
yes, we can ask
one of the issues that I'm a little bit unclear about is the ownership of some of the applicant was not clear on his current title to some of the properties that are on Teller Road that were conveyed or proposed to be conveyed as part of the application. Specifically, I can refer to first sheet, which is the existing conditions map of the property. I am not clear on the current. It appears that the owners of, I believe it's Casper at 120 Teller Road, signed as owners of a portion of the property and may have an ownership interest in the project. And I'm not clear on what portion. The existing conditions does not depict the actual property that they own at the current time, so that this commission can see that. So it doesn't truly show the existing conditions. I think it shows the proposed conditions. Similarly, I think there either is or was a conveyance contemplated by Cullman and Hackett with respect to 100 Teller Road, and I'm wondering if, I suppose, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask you if there's, I would ask through the chair to the applicant to explain what the current title is to show the true existing conditions and what conveyances, if any, have been completed with respect to these two properties.
Thank you. The applicant has an opportunity on their rebuttal to address that point you raised, or the commission, we can ask that question to them.
Okay.
But
all right.
the public, you can't question the applicant.
Okay, and the reason I raise that is it appears that at the present time the Casper property is a non-conforming property by virtue of the fact that it looks like a frame garage, I believe, is indicated on this portion of the property. That would be on the, I guess, the south boundary line of the Casper property. It appears to be non-conforming by virtue of its proximity to the sideline setback. I don't know the degree to which there was a conveyance now or recently, but it appears that the Coleman and Hackett property, some portion of it may have been conveyed to the applicant, I'm not sure. And I'm wondering whether there's an increase in the nonconformity by virtue of that conveyance, but I wasn't able to determine that. So I would urge the commission to maybe raise that question. I don't know. In terms of the, I appreciate the, this commission has, the workings of this commission are guided by the fundamentals, by principles of fundamental fairness and I suppose reasonableness. This commission has always been fair and reasonable in my experience, and I appreciate and understand the logic of allowing the applicant to bring the information to the commission and to produce the information to satisfy the concerns regarding 31.2.21. I do note, however, that it is the burden of the applicant to demonstrate that their application meets all the standards of the zoning regulations and subdivision regulations. And I don't know that I ever saw either at Conservation, and I've reviewed the entire record before Conservation Commission. I should also note, if it hasn't been stated, that that matter is presently on appeal to the Superior Court. So I believe that the applicant pointed out that it had been approved and worked over very carefully by the Commission staff, Conservation Commission staff, but I would note that it is presently on appeal, and we're in the briefing portion of that appeal at the moment. But certainly, I've never seen in any of the documents that were submitted to the Conservation Commission, and there is a voluminous record, and I didn't see in any of the documents in this case that there's ever, frankly, been a calculation of the swamp wetland, of the areas of focus and concern under 31.2.21 that we've discussed. So I understand that the Commission is, and I understand the logic, and I appreciate the the goodwill that this commission has always exhibited to applicants, and I think it's probably fair, but I would also suggest that it is the applicant's burden to bring that up front, and that wasn't done here. So I think, again, the primary objection to this application and the concern that keys directly into the concerns of my client are that you are creating a cul-de-sac. You're turning Little Brook Road into a 13-lot cul-de-sac road. And the fact that the Marion Road intersects Little Brook at some point other than the end does not change the subdivision regulation in that regard. The bottom line is Little Brook Road is being created and being turned into a 13-lot cul-de-sac. Your regulations don't permit that, and we urge the commission to deny this application. I don't know if the commission has any questions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention, for hearing me out.
Our rapt attention and our...
Yes. Generous cooperation.
What's that? Is there any other member of the public who wishes to comment on this item? Any other public comment? Okay, come on up, ma'am. Or sir.
Just a quick one.
Sure. Just give us your name and address for the record, sir.
Peter Angelopoulos, 189 Teller Road. If this subdivision would go through, what's the rationale of not taking down the old schoolhouse? Not sure if you've seen it, the conditions that it's in, but we've noticed a lot of people on our side of the neighborhood. I've noticed a lot of noises. It looks like coyotes, like a pack of them. And I mean, I'm not sure if it's the property owner's responsibility to do something about that, called animal control or something, or if you have the right to do that. But it is a concern, and it's a lot of them. And I don't know what to do from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Eva Lukashevich. I'm from 97 Little Brook Road. has the property next to the area. The coyotes are concerned, of course, and the developer promises to take care of the animals in the future, but it's already in their hands and they are not taking care of it. So that's one of my points. I've heard about a lot about water and taking care of the water, but I never heard of the water that it's really deep underground. They're talking about the storm water. We were putting the addition during very dry season during the summer, and we had 2 sump pumps in order to put just like an extension, like a garage. So the water was just streaming out of the ground. So I'm not sure if the storm water would do that. We certainly didn't expect that amount of water coming. So I'm not sure if the stream that goes on the other end of our street is actually really, coming out from the really more water than we really think. And I want to touch on the safety point as well. When we bought our house, it didn't say that this is like a cut and dry. That's going to be extended in the future. It was called, when we bought it, it was called cul-de-sac. So I feel a little bit disappointed or a lot disappointed and really disoriented. Find myself in the middle of the street now, because my house will be first now rather than the last on the street. So I wish some of you will just think about really of our families and kids rather than all the regulations and things like that, because it is human nature, I guess, to think about kids and elderly and everybody on the street just enjoying our neighborhood rather than somebody who has more money can just come over and take our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make public comment? Hearing none, we'll conclude public comment tonight with the exception of any additional comment that's
Excuse me,
requested.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to address the lot calculation issue this evening.
Okay, and then we'll go to public comment on that issue when you
Yes.
are done. So that being said, there's no more public comment for right now on the issues presented. Mr. Bologna is going to be presenting his concluding remarks and any additional evidence. I believe there may be some additional evidence that comes in. When that additional evidence comes in, any member of the public could comment on that additional evidence, at which time we go back to Mr. Bologna for his concluding remarks, but limited to the additional public comment on his additional evidence.
Could I suggest, Mr. Chairman, it's your meeting, but if we just put on our evidence, which is going to be very brief, allow comment on it, and then I'll make my closing remarks once.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. That's
All right.
fine.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We got promotion there.
If I may, I'm going to ask Mr. Kenny
So that's
to
the same
come
pay,
back. I'm going to ask Mr. Kenny to come back to the podium and talk to you about these interesting words that appear in your regulation: rivers, ponds, marsh, and lakes. Rivers, ponds, lakes, or marsh, and what is on the site as opposed to what is in that regulation. So,
Right.
okay.
You hold on 1 second. We got to change the tape.
Okay, Brian, we're all set.
Mr. Kenny?
Good evening, Bill Kenny, professional wetland scientist, soil scientist. Mr. Bologna asked me to comment upon the terms in section 31.2.21, the last paragraph, first sentence, and whether or not on Lot 5 there were any areas consisting of rivers, ponds, lakes, or marsh. north corner of the lot is a very short segment of a watercourse that I would characterize as a stream. The northern and central portion of the property includes a wooded wetland, woodland wetland or swamp. I know that in 2 reports that I prepared for the Wetland Agency, and I believe they were also submitted to you, my wetland mapping report and my ecological assessment report, in both of those reports, I characterized that wetland as being a swamp or a woodland wetland. The town Wetland Agency also found that area to be a swamp or woodland wetland. In your regulations, the section that I reference, it uses the word marsh. A marsh is a wetland that doesn't have woody plant material, such as a salt marsh. The word swamp refers to a wooded wetland. So, in my professional opinion, there is a small section of what I would call a small river, stream, in the northern portion of the property, but there's not a pond, a lake, or a marsh.
Mr. Hammonds? Mr. Chairman, Michael Bologna for the record. The question to which I'm going to put to Mr. Hammonds is that if the only area of Lot 5 that contains ponds, lakes, rivers, or marsh is the small stream in the northern point, whether there would be sufficient lot area that can be counted under your regulation to constitute the 20,000 square feet. So, Mr. Hammonds, with that question in mind, if you would talk to the Commission, please.
For the record, Barry Hammonds again. First of all, I'd like to address Mr. Kinney's letter to the Wetland Commission. It was dated April 29, 2009. In the last sentence of his first paragraph, he says that the system, meaning the wetland and watercourse system, which is located in the northeastern portion of the property, is a gently sloping red maple swamp. That's how he identifies it. In 31.2.21, it specifically says for the lot square, the 100-foot square, cannot incorporate any wetlands. It uses that term. However, for lot area, it says that areas consisting of rivers, ponds, lakes, or marsh shall not be used for compliance with more than 25% of the minimum lot area requirement and shall not be used in the calculation for lot coverage. So 25% can be used if it's not those 4 words in the 20,000. 25% of 20,000 is 5,000. So we need 15,000 square feet of dry land and 5,000 square feet of non-river, pond, lake, or marsh. We have that. And what was confusing me when I stood here before, and I think what was confusing us before, was we were reading no wetlands at all. And that speaks specifically to just the square, not to the lot area requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond.
And just in conclusion on that subject, Mr. Chairman, I would point out to you that you have our inland wetland permit, and that inland wetland permit, as they do, contains a series of findings by the Inland Wetlands Agency. The Inland Wetlands Agency made a finding based on Mr. Kenny's testimony and his reports that this is a red maple swamp, wooded red maple swamp. That's in their finding as well, and so that is my conclusion of our evidence and our remarks on that topic. I would ask Mr. Barrett if we've answered the question. I'm not saying have we convinced you, I'm only simply have we provided evidence on the issue for you, sir.
Yeah, you provided evidence on the issue for me, yeah.
All right, thank you.
And I was clear on the 2 questions, the bottom one addressing the lot area and the top one was just dealing with the minimum square, the 2 different paragraphs.
All right, thanks.
So I was clear on it, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bologna. At this time, we go back to public comment again.
Just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I would just suggest that the applicant has not offered objective quantifiable data on the areas of swamp or watercourse on Lot 5, and I wonder how the Commission then makes the required findings of adequate area and so forth. And I understand Mr. Bologna is going to try to finish this evening, so I'll yield to him to conclude. I did want to say when he called the chairman, Your Honor, but I've done that several times, and you're always very patient with that. It doesn't go as well in court when you refer to the judge as Mr. Chairman. On that note, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to comment on the additional evidence that was just presented by the applicant? Sir.
Hi, I'm Mark Smith, 33 Little Brook Road. My concern is that when people are writing regulations, they come into turns of phrase. It's rhythmic, it goes like this, da-dun-da-dun. And my concern is that when the regulation was written, the definition of marsh is different from what may have evolved later, or that may be what's called a stock phrase. And I would wonder, and I would hope that maybe the commission can research that and make sure that when they said marsh, they didn't mean wetlands or swamp or some other term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to comment on the additional evidence? Hearing none, we'll go back to the applicant for his concluding remarks. And maybe if you could, Mr. Bologna, just so I don't interrupt you, or we don't interrupt you, I'm sure one of the commissioners is going to ask you if you can just comment on the ownership issue raised by Mr. Green and whether, in fact, there's an increase in the nonconformity or an enlargement of a nonconformity that is created by certain transfers that may have occurred here.
As I understand it, and I don't have personal knowledge of this, and my understanding is that the area enclosed within the sharp black outline here is owned by Mr. Coco and Mr. Picarsi, who are among the applicants here. It is further my understanding that the area enclosed within the dotted line here at the rear of the so-called Casper lot is under contract. That is to say, Mr. Picarsi and Mr. Coco are contract purchasers of that area. I can see by the existing conditions plan that this shed, which is on the lot line between the Hackett and Coleman property and my client's property, I see the note, frame shed to be removed. So I submit that if this subdivision is approved, or I guess if the way this works, if this land has been conveyed, which is my understanding, then that shed's coming up. So you don't have a nonconformity there as I understand it. The question then is there an increase in the nonconformity on the Casper lot? Would there be an increase in the nonconformity on the Casper lot in the event that this conveyance took place? And I think that number one, I can't sit here tonight and analyze whether that garage or outbuilding is or isn't in the setback, and whether conveying a piece off the rear, which doesn't affect that setback, increases the nonconformity, whether this implicates coverage, I don't know. I will say this, if it does, it doesn't make any difference to this particular application. How could it? So it's an interesting legal point. Do the Caspers go into nonconformity? Does that mean that the lot line revision can't take place? I don't know, but I don't think that this subdivision, if we're entitled to subdivision approval, we're entitled to subdivision approval. If there's another legal impediment to our going forward and building that subdivision, then there is. If there's a legal impediment to the Caspers continuing to own their property with the buildings the way they are, it's a different issue. It's outside the question before the commission this evening. So that's the best I can do in answering that question, anticipated to come from one commissioner as a result of Mr. Green's questions. I understand Ms. Olson's concern. It would irritate me if my mail got delivered at Commerce Drive. You have the letter from the neighbor to the commissioner, which was passed to Mr. Kessler for comment, and Mr. Kessler's response, Fire Chief Marshal, was that if people are parking on that road illegally to go to that park, that can be addressed with signage and enforcement. And that remains the situation whether or not this subdivision goes through. Our subdivision is not adding trips. You heard the expert. Now, Mr. Green posits the FedEx truck. But Mr. Green started that sentence with, "I'm not an expert." Whether there are more FedEx trucks on Mr. Green's street is of no moment to this commission in considering whether this proposed subdivision complies with your subdivision regulations. Mr. Galante, as Mr. Green conceded, is a scientist, and he operates in accordance with scientific, peer-reviewed, ordinary engineering standards. That's the evidence that you have before you. I believe that it is the town's desire and it is the applicant's intention to preserve the historic resource of the old school, and I would submit that I'm unaware of any obligation of a property owner to deal with wildlife on his property, and I would submit that I, again, respect that as a concern of a neighbor, but again, I don't think it's within this commission's consideration as to whether this application complies with your subdivision applications. I pointed out that we're in America. We have property rights. Well, you know what else we have in America? The right to sue. It's the first day of law school. All our torts kids were raising their hand and asking Professor Fleming James, if this and this and this happens, can you sue? If this and this and this happens, can you sue? And the answer is, of course you can sue. You can always sue. And so the fact that this conservation approval, where the staff, the Fairfield conservation staff recommended approval, the fact that it's on appeal just means that the neighbors have the right of access to the courts. I'm asking you to think about, as you evaluate whether the drainage structures are adequate, the fact that that staff, and you know how they behave, and you know how they analyze, and that commission, and you know how conservative it is, has already done this. The pendency of the appeal is, again, of no moment to your analysis as to whether this proposal with these drainage structures and this stormwater attenuation complies with your subdivision regulations. I haven't seen the letter from Mr. and Mrs. Trinkley. I can't speak to it. But let's go back to this. I'm pleasantly surprised by what Mr. Green had to say about the examples that I gave you of subdivisions. Because he says, see, deep in Hunter Road, deep in Shadowwood, there are these temporary turnarounds. Those temporary turnarounds are the exact same temporary turnarounds that exist at the end of Little Brook Road. That is the reason those were approved, and that is the reason this should be approved. Those temporary turnarounds are what determines compliance with 2.1.6 of the subdivision regulations. Here's an idea that Mr. Green put out there, and at first you say, oh yeah, Little Brook's its own street, so if we go from the east end cul-de-sac temporary turnaround baseball field to the west end, where we're putting in a cul-de-sac, and we count up the lots, well, that's more than 10, and therefore that's a cul-de-sac that runs from the baseball field to where we're going to build our lots. That is not what the regulation says. It's a facile argument. It's kind of appealing on its face, but it's not what your regulation talks about. Here's what your regulation says. No such street shall provide sole access to more than 10 building lots. Access in this neighborhood is not from Little Brook over the baseball field. Access in this neighborhood is up Marion Road. And when you look at from the end of Marion Road at Fairfield Woods Road down to the east end of Little Brook to a temporary turnaround, you're looking at Shadowwood. You're looking at Flower House. You're looking at Hunter. And then separately from that, you are, Mr. Jacobs.
Okay, wait, if you want to get there, I'll argue it, because Limerick is where I live, and Limerick, 20 years ago was supposed to connect to Mill Plain.
Right.
So you're saying it never would, it's a temporary turnaround. It was going to connect.
It was gonna, and it may in the future.
And it was fought.
Okay, and temporary turnaround,
And it was fought.
approved, and it was approved. Okay?
No, the connection was not approved.
Okay. But the temporary turnaround gave rise to the original approval of Limerick and the other road that comes around, which is which one I can't, I mean, but it's in there. That's what got your house approved, that your lot is approved as one of more than 10 on Limerick because there was a temporary turnaround at the end. So, I'm back to where I started with this point. We're building a cul-de-sac. Mr. Green makes it sound like this is some momentous, earth-shattering, case-ending admission that we're saying we're building a cul-de-sac that's not going to be extended. We're building a cul-de-sac that's not going to be extended. The point is, our cul-de-sac is supporting 8 or 9 lots.
And just to be clear, that is because Marion Road intersects it, and you're saying that the homes on the eastern side of Little Brook Road are not provided sole access by the other side, the cul-de-sac side.
Yes.
And so on that basis, you're counting only the homes from Marion to your cul-de-sac in the
Yes,
calculation.
absolutely right. Yes. So I come back to this, and I said it before, and I'll say it again. If my clients have provided, and they have, a layout of lots that comply with your subdivision regulations, that meet your lot definitions and your sizes, your 100-foot square, your 20,000 square feet, your 50-foot road, they have a right to subdivide their land. And it is your obligation, under your oath, to analyze that question in good faith. Having done that, if you find it, you must grant. The Pansy Road case, the Nicole Paul case, contain the same language. You have no discretion. You're a planning commission sitting in an administrative capacity. And I would urge you then to analyze this in good faith, think about it, see that it complies, and grant the application. I thank you very much for your patience with us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bologna. This will conclude the public hearing on this matter, and there being no further business on the agenda, we stand in adjournment.